Chapter 261 Salvaging the Food Supplies. Fujin spent a few hours studying the seals on one section of the wall. Due to hiding his chakra and the massive length of the wall, he wasn't detected or seen by anyone. Finally, the sun rose, and at the same time, a smile appeared on Fujin's face. He muttered, "It's cracked." He summarized, "These seals are inscribed by a grandmaster. However, the wall is huge. Whoever inscribed it wasn't very dedicated and did the bare minimum to ensure the safety of the city. However, even if he had been serious, I would have managed to break through, though I would have needed a lot more time. Maybe while I return, I should swing by the Wind Capital and leave a few clones to try to break through the seals there. It would be a good test." Fujin entered the city and transformed into one of the people he saw in Wind Capital. Fujin didn't waste much time and directly began visiting the important locations. He thought to himself, 4 ninjas were at the gates. There should be 28 more ninjas in the city. I wonder if they are also deployed or are resting in the city. Fujin's guess was accurate. The ninjas in the city were divided into 3 groups. The first group of 12 ninjas were responsible for keeping an eye on the city gates in 8-hour shifts. The next group of 12 ninjas were also responsible for protecting 2 crucial locations. The last group of 8 ninjas and 1 elite Junin would stay on standby in case an emergency occurred. Of course, due to how peaceful the city was, every one of them had gotten complacent. Fujin walked towards his target. Soon, a huge fortified structure with sturdy walls that were designed to withstand not only the harsh desert conditions but also any attack by enemy ninjas became visible. This sturdy structure was one of the 2 provision depots in Subakuchuas. It stored a vast amount of harvested food grains and other food items that could be stored. These depots served as a lifeline for the entire western region of the country. Fujin didn't sense any chakra field active around him or the provision depot. So chakra gathered in his eyes and observed inside the depot. He observed, "So this place has only 2 ninjas. I guess the other depot also has 2 ninjas overlooking them. But what exactly are these guys doing? I can feel that both of them are very tense." Fujin was curious, but he didn't care much. He decided, "It doesn't matter, they're only chunnings." His expression became serious as he observed the seals inscribed on the depot walls. He muttered to himself, "The seals are much better than outside city walls. And I can't keep studying this one for hours. Looks like it's time for the dynamic entry." Chakra gathered around his fist. The people who were walking around him were surprised and immediately looked towards Fujin. They noticed that his right fist was glowing. One kid said, "Mum, look, his hand is glowing." Another kid asked, "How can I do that, Mum?" The people were just normal civilians. They hadn't seen ninjas in action. Suddenly Fujin disappeared. Though the walls had very good protection, the same couldn't be said about the doors. Fujin punched the door and smashed it into pieces. The 2 Suna ninjas inside the depot were playing a game of cards. Suddenly, they heard a loud noise and felt the entire depot shaking. The noise generated by the impact of the punch traveled hundreds of meters through the city. The people who were watching the glowing fist curiously became terrified. They immediately ran away. At the same time, the elite Junin and the other ninjas in the city became alert. 14 ninjas along with the elite Junin immediately began moving towards the depot. The 2 ninjas inside the depot got up and grabbed their kunai. However, Fujin flickered next to one of them. The ninja immediately swung his kunai at Fujin. However, Fujin was much faster. A punch landed on the ninja's face and blew him up. Fujin had enhanced the punch with chakra as well. Blood, flesh, bones and insides of the brain hit the face of the second ninja. His horror knew no bounds. 1 second he was playing a game of cards with his friend, and in the next second his friend's brain was blown up. Fortunately, or unfortunately, his misery was short-lived. Fujin fired an air bullet through his throat and ended his life as well. Fujin immediately flickered towards where the grains and other food items were stored. It was easy to find. Fujin knocked the door down and immediately spat a fireball on it. The entire room was lit on fire. However, this wasn't the only grain storage in the depot. There were 7 other such rooms. Fujin immediately began lighting them on fire as well. The elite Junin appeared in front of the depot and was horrified to see smoke coming out of the depot. Fujin had set fire to 3 food storage facilities. Another ninja appeared next to him and asked, "Captain Hitoshi, what are your orders?" Hitoshi quickly commanded, "There should be an intruder inside. I will douse the fire. You guys stop him. Don't let him set fire to every storage facility." He immediately jumped in the smoke. 5 ninjas followed him in. The remaining Sunagakure ninjas in the city kept arriving every few seconds and went into the burning depot. Fujin had set fire to 5 storage facilities. When the Suda ninjas spotted him, Hitoshi immediately made hand signs. 4 water clones appeared next to him. He and the water clones headed towards the 5 rooms from where smoke was appearing. The other ninja immediately ran towards Fujin. One of the Junins screamed hatefully, "How dare you burn the only source of food for the hundreds of thousands of people living here?" Another ninja shouted in rage, "I will skin you alive." 2 threw shurikens at Fujin while the other 3 weaved hand signs. Fujin dodged the shurikens, but the assault had just started. Wind release air bullet jutsu, wind release wind gale wolf jutsu, wind release wind sword jutsu. 8 air bullets. 3 wind wolves and multiple blades of wind moved one after another towards Fujin. Chakra gathered in Fujin's eyes. He immediately flickered out of the way and dodged every air bullet. He gathered chakra in his mouth. Wind release infinite breakthrough jutsu. He exhaled a wind current from his mouth. However, instead of the destructive attack, he exhaled an extremely gentle wind current. The blades of winds entered the wind current and were redirected. They moved towards the doors of the remaining storage facilities and cut through them. Seeing their attack destroy portions of their food supply made their hearts ache in pain. At the same time, their hatred towards Fujin increased even more. Lastly, the 3 wolves entered the wind flow. However, the wind flow was too strong for them to continue. 1 dispersed directly while the remaining 2 were sent crashing into the walls and finally dispersed. However, Fujin's position didn't improve much, as 3 more Suna ninjas had arrived. Half of the 8 ninjas were Junins. Fujin's odds kept getting worse. One of the Suda ninjas slammed his hands on the ground. Immediately the ground rose and interrupted the wind flow he had created. Immediately, the remaining 7 ninjas pounced on Fujin. Dozens of shurikens and multiple wind jutsus were launched at Fujin. Fujin dodged while counterattacking, but the Suda ninjas kept attacking without caring about their chakra reserves. Fujin kept dodging as he sensed 4 more ninjas entering the depot. He frowned. Killing them in a short time isn't possible without using vacuum jutsus. I need a distraction. He weaved a hand sign as he continued dodging the attacks. A fire release fire dragon flame bullet jutsu. At the same time, one of the Suna Junins too completed his hand signs. Wind release wind dragon jutsu. 2 massive 30 meters long dragons appeared in the depot. However, seeing the fire dragon made the Suna ninjas very nervous. The wind dragon collided with the fire dragon, who didn't make any move. The impact of the collision destroyed the fire dragon. The Suna ninjas were surprised at how quickly it was defeated. However, their eyes widened in horror as the winds generated by the wind dragon carried the flames everywhere inside the depot. The doors to the storage facilities that were destroyed earlier let all the fire enter inside. The last remaining food grains that were safe inside the depot began burning. The ninjas attacked while cursing Fujin with every foul word and curse they knew. However, Fujin kept dodging and counterattacking without responding. At the same time, Hitoshi and his clones doused the fire in all 5 rooms. However, their expressions weren't good. Hitoshi muttered, "Even though I doused the fire, all the food items have gotten wet. I am not sure how long it will last." He and his clones left the rooms. Fujin noticed that the smoke coming from those 5 rooms had turned into water vapor. A smile appeared on Fujin's face as he decided, "It's time." Chapter 262 Konoha's scheme. A massive chakra appeared around Fujin. The sudden spike in chakra shocked the Suna ninjas. Without giving them any time, Fujin attacked. Wind release infinite breakthrough jutsu. Unlike the previous version, this jutsu was as destructive as it could possibly be. The Suna ninja, who considered themselves unmatched in wind jutsus, were dumbfounded by the scale and destructiveness of this attack. The attack left giant scars on the sturdy walls of the provision depot. The Suna ninjas were blown apart as well. 2 ninjas had their throats sliced by the sharp winds, another had his eyes pierced, one had his left arm sliced off. The winds also moved into the 8 storage facilities. Hitoshi and his clones were caught off guard. All 4 water clones were dispelled, leaving just Hitoshi in one of the rooms. He quickly weaved a hand seal, water release water prison jutsu. A sphere of water surrounded him and saved him from the impact of the winds, while the Suna ninjas were struggling. A shadow clone appeared next to Fujin. Fire release searing migraine jutsu. He wasted no time in releasing a massive fire into the winds generated by infinite breakthrough. The fire spread began spreading instantly. The winds carried the fire to each and every corner of the depot. Hitoshi watched in anger and helplessness as an even bigger fire entered his room. The 3 storage rooms that had just small fires were set ablaze. Every food grain was burned up. The 5 rooms where Hitoshi and his clones had doused the fire were set ablaze once again with even more intensity. Worse, of the 14 sumo ninjas that were fighting Fujin, 12 were set on fire as well. Only 2 managed to use defensive jutsus in time. Fujin noticed the destruction and decided that should be sufficient. He immediately flickered out of the depot. 2 sumo ninjas were rushing towards the depot when Fujin suddenly appeared in front of them. Both grabbed the weapons and asked, "Who are you?" Fujin looked at them without replying and began building up his chakra. The 2 sumo ninjas prepared themselves for a fight. However, Fujin suddenly disappeared. He used Wind Instantaneous Body Jutsu to flicker directly to the city walls and left the city. One of the ninjas shouted, "Where did he go?" He couldn't even follow Fujin's movement. He was about to look for Fujin when the ninja next to him shouted, "Leave him. First, help douse this fire." The ninja stopped and focused back on the fire. However, before they could do anything, Hitoshi completed weaving hand signs. He poured over 80% of his remaining chakra into the jutsu, water release, great waterfall jutsu. He released a massive amount of water. The water first flooded the room he was in. A massive amount of water was converted into water vapor. But the fire was doused. The water flowed out towards the remaining depot from the door. The sumo ninjas who were on fire immediately ran towards the water and dived in. In a minute, the water entered all the storage rooms in the depot. The ninjas that were outside the depot immediately jumped out of the way as hot water rushed out like a flood. Hitoshi walked out of his room. His expression was ugly. He noticed the burns on his subordinates. He realized he was a censor. If he had done this attack when I was dousing the fire, I could have stopped it. But he timed it perfectly when I lowered my guard slightly after dousing the fires. He looked at the 2 ninjas standing outside and asked, "Did you see anyone leave?" The ninja nodded. "Yes, Captain. We saw a man flicker away in a hurry. We wanted to give chase but decided that saving the depot was more important." Hitoshi sighed and said, "It's fine. Even if you gave chase, you have probably been killed. Range the 2 medical ninjas to heal the injured. I'll watch over the other depot. This one is ruined." He flickered away towards the other depot while being worried. "I hope he doesn't attack the second depot as well. But if he does, I'll abandon the grains and focus on killing him. However, my chakra is very low right now. It will be a very difficult battle." In a few seconds he arrived at the second provision depot. No attack had taken place there. The 2 ninjas stationed were on high alert. Hitoshi sighed in relief. He analyzed. Since he didn't show up here, he should be very low on chakra after using the combination jutsu by himself. He frowned and asked himself, should I have abandoned the provision depot and attacked him instead? I would have had a good chance of killing him. He thought for a bit and shook his head. No, if I had done that, all my subordinates would have died in the fire, and I would have no guarantee of killing him. Besides, if he has any allies, he could have lured me into a trap. Hitoshi cleared up his thoughts and began passing instructions. The security of the second provision depot was increased manifold. 10 ninjas were deployed to defend it. At the same time, medical ninjas began treating the injured ninjas. Hitoshi tallied his losses and sighed. 4 ninjas were killed in the fight. 2 of them were Junins. All the food stored in that provision depot was destroyed, so in a few minutes, they lost half of their food supply. It was certain to put an immense strain on the land of Wind. Hitoshi wrote reports and sent messages to the Kazekage and the Wind Daimyo. Meanwhile, Fujin had long left the vicinity of the city. After leaving the city, he kept using Wind Instantaneous Body Jutsu continuously to escape over 10 kilometers away. Finally, he took a break and thought, that was rough. Bastards came at me with everything they had. Fortunately, the elite Junin was more focused on salvaging the grains. He let out a sigh and thought, no wonder Sunagakure attacked Konoha a few years from now. Shikaku and Hiruzen are 2 crazy bastards. In order to increase the dependence of the land of wind on the land of fire, they decided to burn half the food supply in the western parts of this country. Now the land of wind will have no option but to import massive amounts of food from the land of fire. The sudden rise in demand would also raise the cost of food items, and it will hence result in restricting the budget of Sunagakure. At the very least, Suna shouldn't expect any budget increases anytime soon, especially if Shikaku keeps up these tactics. In fact, they will have to spend their own budget to buy food. If Rasa were to figure out that these incidents were done by Konoha, he would definitely want to attack Konoha, even if he didn't have any solid proof. Only the disruption caused by a war will allow him to reset the ties between the land of wind and fire, and force the Wind Daimyo to cooperate entirely with him. Still, Shikaku wasn't too heartless. The scrolls clearly indicate to just destroy one depot and to not destroy any more if one had already been destroyed. If he had planned to destroy the second depot as well, then these people would have been very hopeless. It would have been a tragedy. Thousands of people would have died due to food shortages. The daimyo's position might have become unstable if people died in large numbers due to food shortages. But now the food they have will be sufficient for them to survive until sufficient food is imported. In the end, not only will this region not experience any tragedy, but the people here will be grateful to Konoha and the Wind Daimyo for helping them so quickly. On the other hand, Rasa and Sunagakure would be hated as their ninjas were too incompetent to protect their food supply. In fact, Rasa will be forced to increase the number of ninjas protecting this city by at least 2 times. A good scheme indeed. Despite not telling him, Fujin was able to discover Shikaku's real intentions through his instructions. Fujin smirked and muttered, "Rasa will be in a real mess soon. Hey, if I didn't have to maintain my disguise, I'd have loved to lure him here and fight a few rounds with him after securing my retreat. Though I won't stand a chance, the opportunities to fight against S-ranked ninjas are just too rare." As Fujin expected, Rasa had a terrible headache. The bad news kept arriving one after another in his office. He had just sent a considerable force towards the west when 2 more reports arrived at his table. He read them both multiple times, and his expression got uglier every time. The first report came from the hospital in Suna. The doctors had checked the blood samples Yura sent back, and stated that it was blood samples of 24 different people. The second was sent by Bucky. He informed Rasa about Manobu's investigation, and about Hiroshi and the 11 traders that came to Wind Capital along with him. Chapter 263 Rasa's helplessness. Rasa studied the 2 reports as he calculated 24 different blood samples. The group had 25 different people, meaning that except one, everyone got injured. But who stayed uninjured? After calculating more, Rasa concluded, "It isn't someone from my ambu. Since they didn't contact me again, it is safe that all 12 of them were killed. This implies that the mercenaries had someone very strong hidden in their ranks who could eliminate all 12 ambu without allowing anyone to escape." His eyes fell on the second report as he analyzed further. That person could very well be this Hiroshi fellow. Either he was with the mercenaries and lured the ambu into a trap, or the more fearsome scenario, that guy killed all ambu and mercenaries by himself. But how strong would he need to be to kill 24 ninjas who were at least at the Chunin level by himself? Rasa shook his head and corrected his line of thinking. No, he could have caught them off guard by using his disguise. However, even in that case, this person needs to be at the elite Chunin level. The 11 traders who came along with him were nowhere to be found. Though Bucky hasn't completed his search yet, it should be a hopeless search, because if this Hiroshi is at the elite Chunin level, then the remaining traders could have been his clones. No, his shadow clones. Probably the assassins were his clones as well. The person who attacked Sabakuchuas should be him as well. Rasa's expression became very ugly as he muttered, "Konoha sent an elite Junin to create a mess in my country so brazenly. They want to increase our dependence on them so that we are forced to stay in an alliance with them." Just like Fujin, Rasa could see the impact of destroying just one of the 2 provision depots in the west. The scenario was just too favorable to Konoha. Unfortunately, he had no proof to give to the daimyo or the public. However, despite the absence of any proof, he was certain that Konoha was behind it. Within a day, he sent messages to every noble in the west who supported him. In addition, he dispatched another 200 ninjas to the western parts of the country. Fujin had no idea that he would soon be hunted all across the vast deserts. However, the reinforcements were very far away. Traveling across the desert needed 3 days. During this time, Fujin had eliminated another noble who supported Rasa completely. Rasa's mood worsened even further after receiving the news. In a rage, he shouted, "Does Konoha want to go to war?" He looked at his assistant and commanded, "Call every council member in the village for an emergency meeting." The assistant nodded and got to work. Within half an hour, most of the council members arrived. Rasa informed them about the situation and his calculations. Every council member agreed with his calculations. Rasa stated, "Konoha seems to be hell-bent on making life difficult for us. We have to retaliate." However, his words caused a wave of silence to spread through the room. After half a minute of silence, one council member commented, "We have no way to retaliate. Since the Yucha massacre, Konoha has increased their defenses multiple times. The number of their ninjas moving in the Land of Fire has increased multiple times. We will have to send either elite Junin or a squad of Junins to be able to achieve something significant. And once they succeed, Konoha will hunt them until they are killed. In addition, they have the Yamanaka clan. Not only will our ninjas be killed, but their memories will also be read, and if Konoha uses that information to convince the Wind Daimyo, then our budget will be restricted even further. The other council members agreed with him. Rasa also frowned. He had a very low number of elite Junins. He didn't want to send them to their deaths. In addition, their deaths would hurt Suna in multiple ways. Silence spread through the room. The only eligible name they could think of who wasn't already exceeding 50 years in age was Bucky. But Bucky was helpless in dealing with the situation in the Wind Capital. If he messed up after entering the Land of Fire, they would lose one of their strongest fighters. None of them wanted to risk this. Finally, one of the council members suggested, in my opinion, we should focus on killing the elite Junin that has infiltrated our country. If we kill him, Konoha will feel heartache at losing him. After all, the value of an elite Junin exceeds more than 100 chunins, especially considering that he is a very good user of wind jutsus. No country needs wind affinity ninjas more than Konoha. Everyone immediately agreed with him. The meeting ended without deciding on any good plan to hurt Konoha. Rasa sighed in disappointment as he too couldn't think of any good method to retaliate. He just hatefully looked in the west. Round the same time, Konoha received intel about the recent happenings in the Land of Wind. Hiruzen read the reports with a weird expression and called Shikaku. Shikaku received the scroll from Hiruzen. His expression also became weird. Hiruzen chuckled and said, "You messed up. You should have defined the mission parameters properly." Shikaku sighed and muttered, 10 nobles, 12 family members of nobles, 4 ninjas, and 1 food storage depot. Does he intend to start a war? He let out another sigh and said softly, "What a drag." I told him that it is the promotion mission for Anbu Captain. Why is he acting like he wants to become the Anbu commander? Hiruzen let out another chuckle. Shikaku looked at him and said, "This isn't a laughing matter. He has acted so many times that Suna will definitely suspect us. Even if he didn't leave any evidence, they will still want to retaliate." Hiruzen nodded and said, "Fortify our defenses, set up traps for any enemy squads who would want to create a mess in our country. In addition, prepare yourself for more such news. After all, he has just reached the western side of the Land of Wind." Hiruzen wasn't worried about Suna's retaliation. Instead, he wanted to use the opportunity to kill their elite troops. As long as Suna's strength was kept in check, they wouldn't try to break the alliance openly. Shikaku sighed and said, "We also need to know what deal Rasa and Wind Daimyo reached. This wasn't what we wanted. If they resolved their differences, then all our efforts would be pointless." He suddenly stopped speaking and looked at Hiruzen and asked, "Why do I have to do it?" Hiruzen had asked him to do a very tedious task in such a smooth manner that he didn't even consider refusing it. However, he had no will to spend a lot of time working on it. Hiruzen replied, "Because you were the one who messed up." Shikoku retorted, "You were in the room as well." Hiruzen nodded and said, "But you were the one to pass the orders." Both entered into a staring contest. After a minute, Shikoku sighed and got to work. As soon as the door closed, Hiruzen chuckled once again. He looked at the reports once again and thought, "I should have expected this, but it's all right." Suna was becoming too arrogant. If they aren't reined in, they will soon become more chaotic and break off the alliance. Once that happens, the 4th Great Ninja War will just be a matter of time. Hiruzen got up and looked out of his window at the stone faces. He let out a sigh as he thought, "Finally, our strength has recovered. Once I officially promote the current crop of ninjas to Junin rank, our numbers will have reached sufficient levels officially. However, we still need a few years of peace for this generation of ninjas to fully mature. Then we can afford to enter another war." As he looked at the stone faces, tiredness could be seen on his face. However, suddenly he squinted his eyes and chakra gathered in them. He noticed someone sneakily moving on the Hokage monuments. But soon he let out a long sigh and muttered, "I am getting too old for this shit. I should have dumped this kid on his perverted godfather." The entire village suddenly noticed that the Hokage monuments were painted and made to look hilarious. Soon, Iruka noticed it as well and began chasing after Naruto. While Konoha was peaceful and joyous, the situation in the western territories of the Land of Wind was heating up. 148 Sunagakure ninjas arrived in the city of Subakuchuis. Manabu, Yura and 2 more ninjas met up with Hitoshi, who told them every detail regarding their short clash with Fujin. Manobu analyzed and said, Kazekage-sama's analysis seems to be on point. This is most likely the same guy Odaka added, an elite Junin from Konoha. We have to catch him and give him the most painful death imaginable. But he scratched his chin and asked, how do we find him in these vast deserts? Yura looked at Odaka and replied, he seems to be targeting the nobles that favor our village. We just have to study his movements and discover his next target. Then we can set up an ambush for him. Odaka looked at Yura carefully. Odaka was one of the few elite Junins in Suna, and a council member as well. He was quite senior as well. Along with Manobu, he was one of the 2 leaders of the Suna ninjas that arrived in Sabakuchuas. He said, Good, you're good, Yura. It's good to see promising ninjas in the next generation. The last member of their group was an Ambu captain who was assigned as the leader of the 20 Ambu ninjas. He was wearing an eagle mask. He said, let's lay down a map and analyze his movements. We also need to analyze his abilities. Then we can set a trap. The group nodded and entered Hitoshi's office. Chapter 264 A Devious Trap. After entering his office, Hitoshi laid down a map on a table. All 5 ninjas stood around it. Odaka asked, Eagle, what do you recommend? Eagle took a marker and circled Sabakuchuas and a nearby town and said, he first burned a provision depot in Sabakuchuas and then killed a noble in this town. The nearest town from there is Korinshi, but that town doesn't have any noble. So according to my estimations, his target could either be the city of Shunkto or the town of Kigajinma, but it is difficult to say which one. Manobu and Odaka began analyzing. After a couple of minutes, Manobu sighed and said, it's impossible to say which one he will target. We will split up and guard both cities. Yura and I will go to Shunkto while Odaka and Eagle will go to Kigajinma. Hitoshi, you stay in this city and ensure that the last provision depot stays safe. We will leave 20 additional ninjas with you. The remaining will be divided equally among us. Odama, Hitoshi and Eagle nodded. They agreed with Manobu's plan. They quickly began discussing which ninja squads would join their groups. Suddenly, Manobu noticed something amiss and looked at Yura. Yura was still staring at the map and didn't say a word. Manobu asked, is something the matter, Yura? Yura snapped out of his thoughts. He said, I have a different take on this, Elder Manobu. Manobu said, explain. Yura said, if we split up, our chances of killing him will decrease. And if we move to those cities, then he might notice our movements and avoid hitting them altogether. In that case, our deployment will be a waste and he might annoy us further by randomly targeting other nobles, forcing us to split into smaller groups. In addition, he should already have a good lead on us. If he kills that noble before we even reach, then we won't be able to do anything and might get exposed for nothing. His words made others frown. They had considered these points but not in this detail as they didn't see any other option. Manobu asked, what do you suggest? Yura said, let's abandon these 2 nobles. The eyes of the 4 ninjas widened at how casually Yura asked to sacrifice the 2 nobles. Yura pointed at a city on the map and said after he kills the nobles in Shunkto and Kigajinma, he will target the noble living in Mizunushi City. While he is busy killing those 2 nobles, we can move around this territory and set up a giant trap in Mizunushi. Before he reaches there, we will hide inside and around the city using Fuin Jutsu. When he attacks, we can all surround and kill him. Yura's plan surprised them. They thought about his words and agreed more and more with him. Though 2 nobles would die, the sacrifice would be worth it if they killed him. It was an exchange they were more than willing to make. Odaka looked at Yura in a new light. He thought, I was just teasing him earlier for pointing out the obvious, but he is indeed good. This level of talent should be in the council. Manobu said, that is a good plan. Much better than mine for sure. Hitoshi added, good plan, but there is one flaw. The ninjas deployed at the city gates didn't notice any anomalies or anything strange, so I speculate that he entered the city without alerting the seals inscribed here. Yura replied, I considered that. But this city is very big and was guarded by just 4 ninjas at the entrances. So he would have had opportunities to study the seals, but in Mizunushi, he will be able to sense us only if he is a sensor and activates his chakra field. However, doing so while attempting assassination will be very stupid, so he won't do it. Yura's explanation made sense. Everyone agreed. He added, in addition, the time would allow for the backup sent by Kazekage-sama to arrive, so we can even set up a perimeter in the desert to stop him in case he somehow manages to escape. Either way, the battlefield will unfold as we want. Manobu said, yes, hunting him will begin easier if backup arrives before we set a trap for him. I'll communicate with them. You guys finalize the plans. Manobu quickly left. The rest quickly finalized the details of their trap. In the end, they decided to leave 30 ninjas in the city. They will not only aid in the defense of the provision depot, but would also be responsible for ensuring that the fact that so many ninjas arrived in Sabakuchuiz doesn't get leaked outside the city. Within an hour, 118 ninjas led by Manabu and Oduka left the city of Sabakuchuiz. They moved around the town of Kigajinma and moved towards the city of Mizunushi. As Yura calculated, Fujin had made his move. Just after they left Sabakuchuiz, Fujin killed the noble in Kigajinma and quickly began moving towards Shunkto. As he moved, Fujin analyzed. As expected, the nobles are being heavily protected, but there wasn't any Junin-level ninja protecting him. I guess Russell wasn't able to send reinforcements so quickly, or perhaps the other Amber who are supposed to be on a promotion mission are also making a mess and forcing Russell to deploy his ninjas everywhere. I can't be sure which one is the case, but it is better to assume the first one. My next target will probably be the last one without any significant protection. Within a few hours, he arrived outside Shunkto. His eyes glowed as he observed the walls of the city. He muttered, "This one has no seals to protect it either. I am disappointed at how lazy Sunagakure has been. Granted these cities are far in the west, but is it really so much work to just ask a Fuin Jutsu Grandmaster to visit all these cities and bless the city by carving a few seals?" With no seals to block his path, Fujin just entered the city normally while maintaining a disguise. He casually walked into the city while moving towards Noble's mansion. After a few minutes, he arrived outside the mansion. He hid in a corner where no one would see him and muttered, "All these nobles live right at the center of the city. I don't even have to make any effort to find them." Fujin sighed. His mission had been progressing too smoothly. He was itching for a good fight. Of course, he wouldn't seek it if his enemies didn't act smart enough and allowed him to do his job without any resistance. His eyes glowed as he observed the mansion. He analyzed. 8 ninjas, 2 at Chunin level and 6 at Genin. Rasa is awfully slow. Are they planning to lower my guard by giving me easy kills? He made a hand sign. Earth release Earth military movement jutsu. Fujin disappeared into the ground and entered the mansion. None of the 8 ninjas were sensors, and Fujin was suppressing and hiding his chakra, so no one detected him. Fujin moved directly towards the central room where Fujin had detected 3 people. 2 of them were ninjas, while the third one was a civilian. This was the room where the noble was hiding. He was sitting in a chair while the 2 ninjas stood next to him. He nervously asked the ninjas standing next to him, "Lord Kazuo, how long do we have to keep hiding here?" Kazuo was the Chunin in charge of the defense of this remote city. He replied respectfully, "Don't worry, Lord Toshio. Reinforcements from our village will arrive soon." Toshio was still very worried. Kazuo assured him, "We are here with you as well, Lord Toshio. Live or die, we will join you, so don't worry." The noble nodded. For some reason, he looked to be very fearful of Kazuo. Suddenly, all 3 of them looked ahead. A head popped out of the ground. In the blink of an eye, an entire person appeared. Toshio was horrified. Kazuo and the other ninja also had solemn expressions. However, both had determined expressions. They seemed to have accepted their fate. They quickly grabbed their kunai and took a fighting stance. Kazuo asked, "Who are you?" Fujin didn't bother replying and shot an air bullet at Toshio. The Suna ninjas couldn't even react when the bullet hit Toshio's chest. Toshio's eyes widened. Time slowed down as he felt the pain in his chest. He knew that the Suna ninjas wouldn't be a match for the intruder, but he didn't expect to be killed so quickly. However, instead of sorrow or horror, a gentle smile appeared on his face as he looked at Fujin. His smile surprised Fujin. It was the first time he had seen a noble accept death with a smile on his face. Toshio thought, "My time has come, but my family will live a life of comfort and luxury." He closed his eyes and accepted his death with a gentle smile on his face. Chapter 265 The Spirit of Sacrifice. Fujin was stunned by the smile on Toshio's face. Despite being the killer, he noticed no hatred in Toshio's eyes for him. There was just relief alongside some reluctance. Thoughts clashed at the speed of light in Fujin's brain, trying to make sense of this bizarre scenario. He muttered to himself, "What the hell?" Kazuo and his subordinate noticed Fujin's momentary lapse of concentration. Both immediately jumped at Fujin to kill him. However, Fujin was well aware of his surroundings. He stepped to his left and got out of the Genin's range. He caught Kazuo's arm and kicked him in the abdomen and sent him flying into the wall. He crashed into the wall and fell on the ground and began vomiting blood. The Genin landed and moved towards Fujin again. However, all he saw was a fist coming straight at him. Fujin's chakra-enhanced fist landed on his face and blew it off his head. Kazuo gathered himself and was about to get up when a kick landed on his side and sent him rolling on the floor while vomiting more blood. Numerous ribs had cracked. Fujin didn't attack anymore and asked in a plain voice. Who was that man? Kazuo finally managed to get on his knees. He looked at Fujin hatefully and shouted angrily, "You killed the kind noble Toshio. A demon like you will rot in hell." Fujin snorted, "Save your lies for yourself. I have killed way too many nobles to not identify one." Who was he? Kazuo's eyes widened. However, he immediately put on an angry face and cursed, "First you kill our noble and then talk bullshit. Just kill me and be done with it. I will wait for you in the deepest layers of hell." Fujin didn't attack him and said, "Good play. I feel stupid for not considering such a simple trick. You knew I was going to come here, so you hid the real noble and used a body double. Cool trick." Kazuo's eyes widened once again. Thoughts ran through his mind trying to find the optimal reply. He wanted to convince Fujin that he killed the real noble. However, he realized that he wouldn't be able to do so. The more he lied, the more Fujin would be convinced. A grin broke on Kazuo's face. He spoke loudly with pride. "That's right. How does it feel to be tricked by the oldest trick in the book?" Ha 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 ha. Fujin didn't mind his taunt. He wasn't petty enough to not give credit where credit was due. It was a fact that he was fooled. If the body double hadn't smiled kindly and behaved like any normal human being, he would have been fooled successfully. He replied plainly, "Unfortunately, your plan has failed." Kazuo replied with that huge grin still plastered on his face. "It hasn't. Even if you realize the plan, there isn't anything you can do. You don't know where the noble is hiding. No one other than me does. And I will never say it. You want to kill the noble? Then you will have to kill every single person in this city. No, you will also have to scout the entire desert to check if he has been hidden outside the city. And you will also have to kill everyone in every village in the vicinity of this city. Tell me, did your mother Fikung masters from Konoha permit you to commit such atrocities?" Ha ha ha, he continued laughing loudly continuously. Fujin chuckled, "You think I'm from Konoha? Good. How about we make a deal? I will let you and your friends live. In exchange, you will tell me the location of the noble. You can even tell Rasa that the killer is from Konoha." Fujin's words stopped Kazuo's laughter. He became confused and wondered, is he not from Konoha? Wouldn't that mean that someone else is trying to start a war between Konoha and Suna? No, I shouldn't doubt Rasa's intelligence. He might be saying this just to confuse me. He began laughing and said, "No, you can torture me however you want. I still won't tell you," he thought. "If I can delay him here until the reinforcements arrive, then I can drag him to hell with me." Fujin's eyes turned towards the door of the room. He sensed multiple ninjas running towards the room. The fighting earlier generated some noise, it attracted them. A couple of shadow clones popped next to him and left to confront those ninjas. Fujin said, "Unfortunately, torturing isn't my forte. Killing is. Don't worry, I'll let you die knowing what will happen in the future. After I kill you, I will torture the noble's family in public. That should make him crawl out of his hiding spot." Kazuo continued laughing and said, "Do it." Fujin noticed how unaffected he was and concluded, "As I expected, they are fakes as well." Fujin had no clue who the noble was or how he looked. He entertained Kazuo for so long just to get whatever information he could. Now he had received most of the information he needed. He raised two fingers, wind began flowing around them. Kazuo's eyes widened as he realized, "Wind sword jutsu, I guess this is it for me. Sucks that he never came close to me. I hoped he got overconfident and got closer to torture me or beat me up." He closed his eyes and made the confrontation hand seal. Immediately, multiple tags on his body lit up. He looked at Fujin with a crazed look in his eyes and shouted, "I will drag you to hell." However, Fujin was unmoved. Blades of wind shot out from around his fingers and hit every single explosive tag stuck to Kazuo's body. Every single explosive tag was destroyed before it could explode. The wind blades also left multiple deep cuts on Kazuo. Kazuo was stunned. Even if he couldn't kill Fujin, he expected to at least injure him. However, he never expected such a result. Fujin said, "I respect your intelligence and bravery. I'd have allowed you to die in the way you want, but I need this mansion." Kazuo's eyes widened as he saw Fujin transform into him. Fujin said, "Rest in peace." A wind blade sliced Kazuo's throat. However, his eyes were glued to Fujin. As his brain slowly stopped working, numerous questions arose in his mind. How did he know I would explode? Why does he keep speaking in such a plain, monotonous tone? Why didn't he get angry no matter how much I taunted him? And why does his face show no emotions at all? Unfortunately, he wouldn't get any answers. He closed his eyes and died without knowing the name or the real face of his killer. Fujin looked at him and sighed. A shame that his strength was so weak. Had he been stronger, his name might have been famous throughout the ninja world. Fujin concentrated on his chakra. 8 shadow clones appeared. 1 shadow clone took the disguise of the genin he killed while one dispelled itself. The 2 shadow clones Fujin had created earlier received the memories and dispelled themselves. Fujin and his clones received their memories. 4 shadow clones transformed into the 4 ninjas that the clones killed. While the last 2 clones dived into the ground and moved towards the basement, the last 2 Suna ninjas were hiding there to protect the fake family of the noble. Fujin looked at the person who was disguised as the noble and wondered. Why did he smile in such a way? What sort of life would one have to experience to smile at his killer without any hate? Fujin analyzed for a bit but couldn't come up with a definite answer. After all, he had no idea who the man was and what his life story was. Fujin extended his hand towards his head. Yin chakra poured out of his hand and entered the dead man's brain. The yin chakra gently began following through his neurons. Fujin kept at it for 3 minutes before the dead man's brain started to break down. Fujin frowned and muttered to himself. I thought that the desire to truly know the memories could be a factor in reading memories. I guess not. Fujin sighed and gave up. He was very interested in knowing his backstory, but had no means to know it. He stored the dead body. 2 days ago the news of the destruction of one provision depot had spread throughout Shongto. The people were very worried. Meanwhile, Toshio was concerned for his life. He thought, if this is done by the same organization that killed nobles and their families in Wind Capital, then I could be on their hit list. No, my family is in danger as well. He immediately began thinking of a plan to ensure his survival, but couldn't come up with any plan. Meanwhile, Kazuo received a message from Sunagakure. He read the scroll and sighed thinking, Russia has lost a lot of influence due to these recent murders. Whoever is doing this must be crazy strong. He doesn't even care about our lives and just wants the noble to stay safe. Kazuo's impression of Russia degraded a lot. However, as a loyal ninja, he was willing to sacrifice his life for his country. He wondered. But how do I keep Toshio safe? He thought for a long time before coming up with a decent plan. He walked towards Toshio's office while sighing. With this method, this old fellow will live, but I will survive only if I am extremely lucky. This really sucks. Chapter 266. When the world is against you, Kazuo entered Toshio's office and said loudly, Everyone leave, I need to talk with Toshio-sama alone. All the servants immediately left. Toshio was stressed thinking about ways to live. He looked at Kazuo with a hopeful look on his face while thinking. Maybe he can think of something. As soon as everyone left and the doors were locked, Toshio said, It's good you came, Kazuo. I was about to find you as well. I have never been so stressed in my life. Kazuo nodded and asked, Worried about the assassination? Toshio nodded. Kazuo replied, You don't need to be worried. Lord Kazekage has asked me to ensure that you and your family stay safe. A look of relief appeared on Toshio's face. He asked, Did you think of a way? Kazuo nodded and replied, Yes, listen carefully. You and your family will move out of the mansion. All 4 of you will stay under disguise by using makeup, wearing ordinary clothes and moving to live in an ordinary house in the city. You won't have any servants or guards. No one other than me will be aware of your location. In the meantime, decoys will have to be arranged to replace you and your family. If the assassin attacks, that decoy will die. As long as the decoy doesn't blow up your cover, you will get to live and the assassin will go away. If your cover is blown, then you will have to stay hidden for a long time until that assassin gives up. I'll probably not be alive by then, so your survival will entirely depend on you. Toshio became excited after hearing the plan. However, he hid his excitement and put up a sad face and asked, Do you have to risk your life? Kazuo easily saw through the fake concern and said, It's the life of a ninja. Stop wasting time and prepare to move out and arrange for decoys. I am not sure how much time we have, Toshio replied. I already have decoys in mind. I'll arrange them for my family. However, I need your help to bring the one for me here. His name is Tetsuo. Toshio gave him the address of Tetsuo and explained his circumstances to Kazuo. Kazuo nodded and left. Toshio immediately got to work. He made 3 people disguise themselves as his wife and sons and asked them to stay in the basement. They knew the consequences of disobeying him and agreed. At the same time, Kazuo reached the outskirts of the city. He searched for a bit and saw an old house. Outside, a middle-aged man was sitting. He looked very tired and sick. Kazuo approached him and asked, Are you Tetsuo? Tetsuo was surprised. He looked at Kazuo and immediately recognized him. His eyes widened as he got up in a hurry and bowed down. Lord Kazuo, it's an honor that you know my name. Kazuo nodded and said, Come with me, Toshio-sama has instructions for you. Without waiting for his approval, Kazuo turned around and began walking. Tetsuo immediately followed. However, he was confused and wondered, what would Lord Kazuo and Lord Toshio want from someone like me? Tetsuo's current state was horrible. His body was weak, and he would frequently fall ill. Due to this, he couldn't work continuously, and most of what he earned would be spent in the hospital. So his family's financial condition was very poor, and he was in a lot of debt. He wanted a good life for his family, but no matter how much he tried, it seemed like the entire world was against him. They walked into the mansion. Tetsuo received a lot of curious gazes. Making him feel uncomfortable, he did his best to ignore them. He followed Kazuo into Toshio's office and immediately paid respects to Toshio. Toshio put up a kind smile and said, "Get up." Tetsuo got up and asked, "I wonder why you called me here, Lord." Toshio got up and walked past Tetsuo. He looked through the window and asked, "Are you aware of the recent wave of assassinations, Tetsuo?" Tetsuo nodded. Toshio sighed and said, "I am afraid that I too will be targeted by him. I called you here as I have an important job for you." He turned around and looked into Tetsuo's eyes and said, "I am willing to die. However, if I die, then our whole city will suffer. My children aren't capable enough to run a city yet, so I want you to disguise as me and take my place in the mansion." His words shocked Tetsuo. Tetsuo involuntarily stepped back, but he crashed into Kazuo and fell to the ground. He looked at Kazuo, who was staring straight into his eyes. Tetsuo became frightened as he felt that if he said no, Kazuo would kill him. He immediately looked at Toshio and said, "Lord, I have a wife and 2 young children. Without me, they will become fatherless, and no one will be able to look after them or feed them. I would have loved to sacrifice myself for our city, but I just can't leave my family alone." Kazuo frowned. If Tetsuo was reluctant, then he wouldn't work as a decoy. Toshio looked at Kazuo and said, "It's fine, Kazuo. Not everyone can give their lives for the city." He painted Kazuo as the bad guy in Tetsuo's mind while showing himself to be a very just ruler. He looked back at Tetsuo and said, "Tetsuo, I am aware of your family conditions as well as your medical health. If you say no, I won't force you, but hear me out first." Tetsuo nodded. Toshio said, "If you take my place, Kazuo and the other ninjas will be responsible for your safety. You won't die until they are alive, irrespective of whether we get attacked or not. As long as you live, I'll reward you abundantly. I will clear all your debt, give you a stable job in the mansion, and get the best doctors for you to improve your health." He let out a sigh and said, "But if our luck is bad and you die, I will take care of your family. I will clear their debt and give them so much money that even your next 9 generations won't be able to spend it." Hearing the offer, Tetsuo went silent. He was well aware that he wasn't capable of providing for his family, but he loved his family and didn't want to leave them. He fell into deep thought. Toshio and Kazuo didn't disturb him. After 20 minutes of struggling, Tetsuo let out a sigh and thought, "Even if they protect me, I doubt they could stop the assassin. But irrespective of whether I live or not, my family will be taken care of. Though they will be sad about losing me, their sadness will fade away with time, and they will live a fulfilling life. Besides, my death isn't fixed. If my luck changes for once, I will live and my family will not need to worry about money." He got up. Kazuo looked into his eyes and was surprised. He thought, "What determination." At the same time, he looked at Toshio and thought, "This guy might be a scum, but he understands the human heart very well." In order to ensure that his family lived a good life, Tetsuo was determined to risk his life. No matter what, he wouldn't fail this mission. Tetsuo said, "Lord, I am willing to be your decoy." Toshio nodded and said, "Shunkto City will remember your bravery. Kazuo will instruct you further." Kazuo nodded and left the room with Tetsuo. As soon as they left, a cruel smile appeared on Toshio's face. He thought, "It's hilarious how gullible these fools are. Take care of his family, hehe. If he lives, I'll kill him so that no one will know that I hid in the face of danger. If he dies, then I'll burn his body and never tell anyone that he died. His family will think that he just abandoned them. As for what happens to them, how is that my concern?" Unfortunately for Tetsuo, even in his final moments, the world still stood against him. He died without being able to provide his family with what he desired. Present Fujin put his thoughts about the man behind him and sighed, "What a mess. Just when I thought that the mission was too easy, its difficulty rises to an insane level." Despite complaining, a smile could be seen on his face. He enjoyed fighting intellectually. He thought, "I don't know who created this plan, but it's time to dismantle it. I'd have just killed the noble and left, but now I will make this plan backfire splendidly on Sunagakure. But I need to be careful. I have to prepare an escape route in case Suna sends reinforcements." Thoughts ran rapidly through Fujin's brain as he calculated a devious scheme. Chapter 267, a drama. Fujin's clones entered the basement and killed the last 2 Suna ninjas in the city. The people who were disguising themselves as Toshio's family were horrified. They immediately began screaming and begged, "Please let us live. I promise we won't tell anyone what happened here." Despite the fear, they didn't expose that they weren't related to Toshio. They knew that if they did, their families would suffer for generations, and Toshio would kill them, even if the assassin didn't. Fujin's clones ignored their screams. One clone weaved a few hand seals. Bufra no Ekari Jutsu, terror could be seen on their faces. However, nothing happened. The look of terror faded away, and instead, they became confused. Some wondered, did his jutsu fail? Suddenly, they got a weird feeling. They felt a slight squirming in their stomach. In an instant, that squirming turned into a sharp pain. They felt as if their stomach was infested by hundreds of maggots. The maggots began eating their way from inside their bodies. The sharp pain soon turned into agony as they felt every mouth ripping and eating the skin. Tissue and tendons, everyone held their stomach while screaming in pain and horror as the 2 clones watched. One person couldn't take it anymore and yelled at the top of his lungs. The people around him looked at him. Their eyes widened in horror as his stomach was torn open and hundreds of maggots spilled out and began writhing on the ground. Soon they too faced similar fates. Fujin's clones watched as every one of them fell unconscious. However, there were no maggots on the ground, no blood and no torn stomachs. The attack was just a genjutsu. Bufra no Ekari Jutsu was one of the gentustis Fujin learnt during his time in the Ambu. It was a very disgusting jutsu. However, against a ninja, its usage was limited. Any experienced ninja would know that they are in a genjutsu and disrupt their chakra, so its main usage was to disturb the enemy by causing a weird feeling and pain in their stomachs and use that disruption to attack them. Of course, there was one exception. This genjutsu was disgustingly effective when used by the Iburumi clan ninjas. Fujin's clone thought, now they won't wake up for a while. Though I could have used a different genjutsu, this one ensures that they won't wake up for at least half a day. In addition, the horror they experienced will force their brains to forget about this event and the events before they went unconscious. This will make it very difficult for Suna to get the exact information from them. Fujin could have just killed them. But he had killed too many innocent people during this mission. If he could avoid killing more, he would take that option. The clones transformed into the 2 Suna ninjas they killed, stored their bodies and returned to Fujin. Fujin had finished completing his plan. 16 shadow clones popped around him. However, one immediately dispersed. The plan immediately was transmitted to all the remaining shadow clones. The 15 new clones immediately transformed into random people Fujin came across and flickered out. 8 clones rushed out of the city. They spread away at equal distances and formed a perimeter. All of them activated their chakra field simultaneously, monitoring the city from all sides. If reinforcements from Suna arrive, they would send the message back to Fujin, who would withdraw immediately. The remaining 7 clones mixed with the common people in the city. Inside the mansion, Fujin and his clones, disguised as Suna ninjas, left the room. The servants in the mansion were all hiding in fear after the sounds of the fighting spread throughout the mansion. Though the sounds had stopped, they weren't sure who won. Seeing the Suna ninjas walk around the mansion relieved them. Fujin's clones looked at them and said, "The assassin is killed. You can relax." The servants all smiled. One said loudly, "I knew that any assassin couldn't kill Sunagakure ninjas. We are the strongest ninja village." Fujin's clone chuckled and asked, "Is that so? Then why were you hiding?" The servant immediately became nervous. He thought, "Shit, I was just trying to get in their good books. Why is he making it difficult for me?" The servants around him also stared at him. They were quite sick of his bootlicking ability. The servant said while stuttering, I was... Fujin's clone chuckled again and said, "It's fine. I have a job for you guys. Leave the mansion and spread the message. The assassin who kept killing the nobles is dead. There will be a huge announcement made, so everyone who can should arrive around the mansion." The servant immediately said, "I will immediately inform everybody." The others also nodded. Fujin's clone added, "If you find others hiding, inform them as well." They agreed and left. Fujin's clones found the others who were hiding and gave them the same job. Meanwhile, Fujin began going through items in the mansion. After searching for a bit, he found a photo album. Looking at it, he muttered, "So this is how this noble called Toshio looks. And this is his family." Though, trying to look for him actively will be pointless, as he should be wearing a disguise to hide from civilians. Fujin created another shadow clone and dispelled it. The memories transferred to all his clones. The 7 clones that had mixed among the civilians began to keep an eye out in case they saw someone who looked familiar. The news spread through the city quickly. The news that an assassin was killing the nobles was already well known. To know that the assassin was killed in their city was a matter of joy and pride. Within minutes, thousands of people crowded around the mansion. Fujin watched it and wondered, will this be sufficient to make the noble crawl out of his hiding spot? Fujin and his clone scanned the crowd for 2 minutes. Unfortunately, they couldn't spot him. Fujin, who had transformed into Kazuo, stepped forward. He said in a loud voice, "Quiet down." Kazuo was well known in the city. The crowd went silent. Fujin continued saying, "An hour ago, Toshio-sama was attacked by that scum assassin. Unfortunately, he encountered me." The crowd listened in anticipation as Fujin looked at them. He shouted, "I killed that coward." The crowd instantly erupted in joy. The entire mansion was drowned in roars. The cheers were heard throughout the city. The ones who couldn't make it regretted not being there. However, they were cheerful as well. Fujin waited for the noise to lower and said loudly, "Tonight, the entire city will celebrate, so come to the mansion in the evening. We will have the largest buffet ever. When the fireworks go off, drop everything you are doing and come here to celebrate." The crowd cheered even louder. "Long live Toshio-sama, Kazuo-sama is mighty." Such slogans were shouted continuously. Fujin looked around with a smile on his face and slowly retreated into the mansion. The crowd lingered for a while before leaving. The news of a buffet spread through the city. Everyone was happy, except one person. Toshio was sitting in a restaurant. A lot of makeup was applied to his face. The people in the restaurant couldn't recognize him. A frown formed on his face as he cursed. "Why is Kazuo spending my money?" His face became ugly at the thought of his money being wasted on commoners. He wondered, should I return to the mansion? That bastard has already killed the assassin. So why didn't he call me back? He thought for a bit and decided, no, I have cooperated with Kazuo for a long time. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for now. As for the money, I can earn it back in no time. He got up and began leaving the restaurant. As soon as he did, he heard 2 people speaking. One guy said, "Hey, did you hear? Toshio-sama hid in the city while a decoy took his place. I didn't expect Toshio-sama to be so cowardly." His friend replied, "Yes, I was very disappointed. I had higher expectations from Toshio-sama." The first guy said, "Yeah, everyone is disappointed. I heard that Lord Daimyo is upset with Toshio-sama, and a new noble would be elected." His friend nodded and said, "Yes, I hope Kazuo-sama becomes our new noble. Under him, we might become the strongest city in the West." The first guy chuckled and said, "I say the decoy should become the new noble. After all, he has the guts and the will to sacrifice himself for us. That's how a noble should be." The 2 continued talking while moving away. Toshio's face became very ugly. He almost lashed out at the 2 but controlled himself. He thought in rage, "I should have known. That bastard tricked me. He is using this opportunity to usurp my power." Chapter 268. Pouring oil on fire. Toshio began walking towards where his family was hiding. En route, he heard similar words being spoken by everyone around him. They talked about how cowardly he was or how gallant Kazuo was, or both. He became angrier and angrier. He took a good look at each and every face that talked bad about him and memorized their faces. Right after announcing a buffet, the 7 shadow clones of Fujin that had mixed among the citizens began spreading rumors. They spread like wildfire. Since Toshio wasn't present during the announcements, people began believing that it was true. In addition, a few knew Toshio's real face and how greedy and selfish he was. They helped fan the rumors. Within a couple of hours, nearly everyone had heard those rumors and were discussing them. That is why Toshio heard them so easily. Toshio entered an ordinary-looking house. As soon as he did, 2 teenage boys and a middle-aged lady looked at him. They immediately noticed his foul mood. One of his sons asked, "Did something happen, father? We heard that Kazuo won and the assassin is dead." "So why are you upset?" Toshio cursed. "That bastard Kazuo has double-crossed me. He is using this to increase his own reputation while ruining mine. He has sights on my position. I'll be going to the mansion right now and put a stop to his plans. You 3 stay here until I return to get you." Toshio's wife said, "Be careful, dear. I am feeling very uneasy." Toshio nodded and said confidently, "Don't worry, he may be a ninja, but he can't do anything to me. Otherwise, the Lord Daimyo will ask for his head." His wife and sons nodded and prayed for his health. Toshio began walking towards the mansion while still wearing his disguise. He planned, "As long as I enter the mansion under disguise, no one will be able to confirm these rumors. I'll dismiss these rumors as foul propaganda and blame it on the ones I saw shit talking about me. Kazuo, you might be stronger than me, but you are a child compared to me when it comes to scheming." He reached the mansion and became enraged once again. The mansion servers were busy arranging tables and chairs inside as well as outside the mansion to prepare for a huge buffet. In a rage, he began walking towards the mansion. At first, no one paid attention to him. However, when he neared the mansion gate, one of Fujin's clone's eyes landed on him. Fujin's clone observed him and wondered, why is this guy so angry, and he is bottling it all up. Fujin's clone tilted his head and wondered, if people could blow up in a rage, I wonder if he'd create a bigger explosion than Daidara. As Toshio entered the castle, the maids and servants finally reacted. One maid was standing quite close to him and carrying some plates. She walked towards him and said, the buffet will be in the evening. Don't come here so early, don't worry, we will have enough food for everyone. Though the maid spoke politely, Toshio could feel the disdain in her voice. His face became even uglier. He said in a deep voice, do you dare stop me? The maid was shocked. Though she couldn't identify from his face, she recognized his voice. She observed his physique and identified him immediately. She dropped the plates in horror and walked backwards. She exclaimed, Toshio-sama. Her words were heard clearly by everyone. They had the same thought. The rumors were true. Toshio knew that he would get exposed. But since everyone here worked under him, he knew how to ensure that they stayed quiet. He looked around everywhere and said in a grim voice, if a word of this is leaked out, you will have to face the consequences. I don't need to tell you the consequences, do I? Not a single person spoke. They were all scared. However, suddenly a voice was heard. Toshio-sama, why are you angry? Come in. Toshio turned his head in the direction of the voice and saw Kazuo inside the mansion. He snorted and went in. Fujin led him into his office. Toshio followed him but was confused. He thought, something feels off about Kazuo, it's like he isn't being himself. Toshio analyzed but didn't understand why Kazuo was acting this way. Fujin knew that his disguise as Kazuo wouldn't be perfect. After all, he had only seen him for a small time. He could replicate his appearance perfectly. He talked with Kazuo for so long before killing to learn how Kazuo spoke. Unfortunately, Kazuo spoke in a very enraged tone, so he didn't know how he talked or acted normally. So this disguise was barely usable. Fortunately, Fujin was only using it to fool common people. So though a few did find something odd, they didn't consider it too much. Fujin and Toshio entered the office. Once they were alone, Toshio angrily shouted, Kazuo, why did you spread those rumors, you bastard? I paid you so much over the years, and you still dare to have greed towards my post. Fujin just chuckled in response. His brazen attitude enraged Toshio even further. However, before he could speak another word, Kazuo disappeared and he felt a blow to the back of his head. He immediately dropped unconscious. Fujin muttered softly, begin the fireworks. His clone nodded and disappeared. Outside the mansion, the servants continued working quietly. They looked like a very disciplined workforce. However, if anyone were to take a closer look, they would notice that the servants were extremely scared. Everyone had grim faces. A servant prayed, I hope no one here is foolish enough to leak the truth, otherwise that vile person will skin us all alive. As they were working, suddenly a loud sound was heard. Everyone looked up at the sky. They were stunned. Despite the sun still being out, they could see a colorful explosion in the sky. They heard some more voices. They looked around to see more fireworks heading towards the sky. The fireworks erupted with a resounding crack, scattering vibrant fragments around the bright canvas above. The people in the city were wrapping up their work in a hurry so as to be free during the buffet when they noticed the fireworks. Soon, most of the people in the city were entranced by it. The unexpected daytime pyrotechnics left the crowd astonished. The explosions unleashed an array of colors and transformed the sky into a living tapestry of vivid blues, radiant reds, and shimmering gold. Each explosion brightened the mood of the citizens and raised their hope for their futures. A young girl's wide eyes locked onto the mesmerizing display. In joy and wonder, she tugged her mother's sleeve and exclaimed, Mom, look, it is so beautiful. Most kids had similar reactions. They all wanted to go there. However, the adults were puzzled. They wondered, didn't Kazuo-sama say that the buffet will be in the evening? Why is he calling us now? However, the crowd also had some simpletons and foodies. They thought, it is the royal buffet. I guess they are inviting us for the royal starters. With watery mouths, they immediately began rushing towards the mansion, unaware of the tragedy awaiting them. Within minutes, the mansion was surrounded by people once again. The numbers instantly reached hundreds and soon crossed 1,000. They noticed that the servants working in the mansion were ranging tables and chairs, but couldn't see any food nearby. However, they waited patiently and eagerly. Fujin waited for a few minutes for the crowd to become substantially larger. Finally, he stepped out of the mansion. He had a plain expression on his face. He walked towards the mansion gate and slammed his hands on the ground. Earth release earth wall jutsu. Instead of a vast wall, a small pillar of 1 meter length and breadth, but with a height of 10 meters rose from the ground. Fujin jumped on it. The crowd was still noisy. He looked around and squinted his eyes. Immediately, a thick bloodlust emanated from Fujin. It spread towards the people. The bloodlust terrified them. Immediately, everyone looked at him in terror. The crowd went silent. They looked at Fujin with fear and wondered, why is Kazuo-sama doing this? Isn't he supposed to be our hero? Fujin observed the crowds and was satisfied with the reaction. The bloodlust terrified the civilians, without harming them. He said loudly, Lord Kazekage has investigated the assassin who killed the nobles and Sunagakua's ninjas. He discovered that he was aided by some traitors. As soon as he said it, one of Fujin's clones flickered next to him and handed him Toshio's unconscious body. The people's eyes widened as they realized what was going on. Fujin said, Toshio was that traitor. He provided the assassin with critical and classified information. Hence, Lord Kazekage has decided that he is to be executed. Chapter 269. A dying city. Everyone's eyes widened. A few who were well learned and were close to Toshio wondered, wait, Lord Kazekage has no authority to punish nobles, only Lord Daimyo has. What is going on? They wanted to voice their opinion, but the bloodlust made them terrified to even open their mouths. A sword appeared in Fujin's hands. His clone held Toshio properly and offered Fujin his neck. Fujin swung his sword, with one swing of his blade. Toshio was beheaded. The crowd watched with complex expressions. They didn't know what to feel. On one hand, they were happy that a traitor had been killed. Perhaps if they weren't suppressed by the bloodlust, they would have even cheered. On the other hand, though Toshio wasn't a good person, he had properly propagated himself to be one. So the number of people aware of his real face was very low. Only the recent rumors tarnished his reputation considerably. They stayed silent and hoped that this nightmare would be over. However, Fujin's next words destroyed all their hopes. Fujin said, Lord Kazekage is very upset over how the noble of Shunkto has caused the deaths of tens of Sunagakuya ninjas. As a punishment, all the ninjas deployed to protect the city will be withdrawn. From this moment onwards, this city won't have any protection from us. The civilians were terrified. Their city was deep in the desert. The climate here was very harsh, so they didn't suffer from any bandit attacks as no bandit group would operate here. However, the city frequently had to face deadly sandstorms. The help of ninjas during this time was indispensable. Without their aid to activate the seals and warn everyone in time, many people would die. The ninjas would also aid a lot after the storm had passed the city in order to restore the city and ensure that it functioned properly. Fujin withdrew his bloodlust and said with a sigh, though I don't want to leave here by yourself. I can't disobey my leader. I wish you well. The people shouted, no, please don't leave us. However, their words were stuck in their mouths as Fujin and his clone disappeared. Only Toshio's headless body was left on the stone platform. They looked around and the remaining Suna ninjas had disappeared as well. Immediately, terror invaded the minds of everyone present. Chaos spread as everyone discussed what to do without any proper plan. Many began talking about leaving the city. A few rushed into the mansion and began stealing expensive items and money, while the rest rushed to their families. After leaving the city, Fujin dispelled all of his clones except one. Memories entered his brain. He analyzed them all and frowned. He thought, what the hell? None of my clones detected any Suna ninja moving towards this city. Where are Sunagaku ninjas? Did Rasa decide to abandon the West thinking that they have no choice but to obey him? But that doesn't make any sense. He should have been sending ninjas here desperately. Fujin looked towards the east and wondered, did Shikaku or some other village stir up huge trouble? Only that would explain such a reaction. But what sort of trouble would they have to stir to make Rasa incapable of sending ninjas here? Fujin began analyzing. However, he couldn't come up with any explanation other than war. He wondered, is there a war happening? But I don't recall any major wars happening at this time, other than the civil war in Kiri. Should I withdraw and check out the circumstances there? Fujin analyzed more before deciding, no, I'll head over to the next city. If there is no one protecting it, I'll withdraw and check out the circumstances around Suna and Wind Capital, else I'll decide after seeing what sort of arrangements Rasa has made for the West. Fujin rested for some time to recover his chakra and moved towards the city of Mizunushi. Back in Shunkto, the news spread throughout the city. The entire city was in a panic. The news also reached Toshio's family. They were immediately engulfed by grief and rage. His wife cursed loudly. "Kazuo Rasa, I will never let this go. Did you forget that my family is related to daimyo as well?" Her sons calmed her down, saying, "Softly, mother, it will be troublesome if someone hears us. They might take out the hate of father on us." She controlled herself. With tears running down her cheeks, she said, "We will leave the city under this disguise and travel to Wind Capital however we can. Only then we can get your father justice." Her sons nodded. They immediately began making preparations. A few influential people stepped forward to control the panic and instilled some sense of discipline and control in the city. The city calmed down a bit. After discussing and making proper arrangements, most of the city decided to leave the city the next day. The next morning, over 80% of the citizens decided to leave the city. Toshio's family also mixed with them. They began traveling across the treacherous deserts and moved towards the nearby cities, towns and villages. Round the same time, Fujin reached Mizunushi City. Suddenly his lost clone dispelled himself and he received his memories. A smile formed on his face as he thought, "As I expected, a vast number of people there will begin migrating. After all, who would want to stay in a dying city, now when they enter nearby cities? They will spread the events that happened in their city. Soon, the news will spread like wildfire throughout the land of wind. The news that Rasa ordered the execution of a noble and left a city with tens of thousands of people to fend for themselves, even though the cities in the east have no option but to stay subservient to Suna. They will become very suspicious of Rasa's intention, and irrespective of what deal the Wind Daimyo and Rasa made, they will enter into conflict once again. After all, that noble's family is still alive. As long as they reach the daimyo, another round of hostilities will begin. Even if they don't manage to, the news alone will make the other nobles pressurize the daimyo. Eventually, some of the people that migrated will migrate to the cities in the east. When they do, Rasa's reputation will be hit even further. He will have to take a hell lot of effort to be able to recover his lost reputation. However, the bad will among the ones who suffered will last for decades. If Shikaku and Hiruzen don't promote me after this and give me access to that section of the library, I'll make them experience a similar hell, though I guess they are too smart to make such a silly mistake." Fujin turned his thoughts towards the city in front of him. His eyes were glowing. He muttered, "Another city without any active seals protecting them. That said, the last assassination was fun. I wonder if this city will make it interesting for me as well." He took a step forward as wind covered his entire body. Before he could land his step, he disappeared from his spot and entered the city. He began walking casually towards the center of the city as usual. As expected, it also had a mansion at the center of the city. Fujin stood in a secluded corner and wondered, "What should I do if this noble is also hiding while a decoy is taking his spot? Doing the same trick twice won't be feasible. After all, many would be suspicious of what I pulled in Shonkto. The same thing happening in two cities will reduce the suspicion on Rasa, and people will suspect foul play. So it will be counterproductive." Fujin thought for a bit and gave up. "Leave it. I'll just kill whoever is acting to be the noble and the Suna ninjas protecting him. Though I should be careful." Kazuo was willing to blow himself up. However, if he had used something original or unpredictable, then I could have had some trouble. As he was deciding, he felt eyes on himself. He turned his head and saw a man approaching him. He laughed awkwardly and asked, "Young man, can you tell me where the flower shop is? I lost my way around here, ha ha ha." Fujin nodded and said, "Sure, travel 3 streets down this road, then take a right and then the second left. You'll find the most famous flower shop in this city." The man quickly said, "Thank you, young man, you saved me." He quickly left. Fujin watched his back, but this time, he didn't dare to use his chakra. He thought, "Suspicious, I didn't sense any chakra from him, but something about him feels off. He approached me right after I used some chakra." Fujin turned around and left in the opposite direction. The man didn't look back at Fujin and continued walking while thinking, "I didn't expect him to know where the flower shop is. Did he just luckily come across the flower shop? Or is he an old spy? But why would someone place a spy in this remote city, unless..." Chapter 270 The Trap Springs. The man was none other than the elite Junin. Odaka. He was hanging around the mansion under the disguise of an old man when he felt some chakra being used by Fujin. So he decided to check him out. However, Fujin gave him the answer spontaneously. Odaka looked at another young man around him and asked once again, "Young man, I want to buy flowers for my wife. It's our anniversary. Can you tell me where the flower shop is?" The boy politely answered, "Just enter this street. The 5th shop on the right is a flower shop." Odaka raised his eyebrows. It wasn't the same location that Fujin mentioned. He pointed at a street a bit farther from his location and asked, "Young man, I was told that the flower shop is in that street after taking the second left." The boy followed his finger. After hearing his words, a look of disgust appeared on his face. He looked at Odaka and said with disgust, "Scums like you deserve to burn in hell." He quickly left, leaving Odaka dumbfounded. He wondered, what the hell did that young man point me to? He looked back at where he saw Fujin, but Fujin was nowhere to be seen. He looked in another direction and his eyes met with one of the Anbu who was hiding. Odaka pointed towards where he had met up with Fujin. The Anbu nodded and left. Meanwhile, Odaka was interested in where Fujin had pointed him, so he quickly moved towards it. As soon as he did, his face turned red and he became angry. He let out a laugh and said loudly, "Good one, boy, you got me." The people around were startled by the loud voice. They looked at him like he was a crazy pervert and maintained a safe distance from him. Odaka was staring at a brothel. In fact, there were multiple brothels and sex toy shops on that street. He immediately left. Fujin, of course, had no idea what was here. He just gave random directions so that no one would think he is new in the city and get suspicious. Even if there was no flower shop there, the person would just assume that they were pranked and curse him without suspecting anything. However, Odaka was not just some person, and he didn't approach Fujin due to coincidence. He immediately turned around and began moving to see what the Ambo could have discovered. However, when he reached the mansion again, an explosion happened inside it. Odaka quickly turned his attention towards the mansion as he heard the sound of the explosion. He wondered, did the assassin attack? He quickly entered the mansion. So did a dozen other Junin-level ninjas. When he was observing the mansion, Fujin had already noticed how many ninjas were inside the mansion. He spotted 9 ninjas, among which 3 were at Chunin level and 6 were merely genins. Just like in the previous city, the noble was hiding in one room with 2 ninjas protecting him while his family was hiding underground. He decided to take the same approach, in the central room in the mansion. The Deko was sitting dressed as the noble. 2 chunins stood next to him facing opposite directions in case there was a sneak attack. This room had a lot of artifacts. Large animals made of wood were placed in the room. The Deko was very nervous. He didn't have the same conviction as Tetsuo. Even the ninjas were very nervous. They were already informed that an attack was just a matter of time. They had heard about the invincible record of the assassin and didn't want to end up dead too, so they resolutely followed all the instructions given by Yura. As they were waiting, a head popped out from the ground. The Dakoi was spooked and immediately shouted in terror, "He's here, he's here." The other ninja turned around where the one facing Fujin immediately threw the kunai he was holding at Fujin and jumped back. So did the other ninja. Fujin's entire body left the ground. He observed the kunai closely, as it had an explosion tag attached to it. He immediately shot an air bullet at it. However, before the air bullet could hit the kunai, the explosion tag exploded. Fujin instantly jumped back and refined his chakra into wind while wondering, "What the hell? Why did it explode so far away from me?" A wind release infinite breakthrough jutsu. The amount of chakra used for performing the jutsu was very low as he didn't want to blow up the mansion. The winds generated by the jutsu instantly blew away the smoke. In addition, a few wind blades were also fired. They hit the Dakoi and killed him on the spot. However, the 2 Suna ninjas had moved sufficiently away to dodge the wind blades. As the smoke cleared, Fujin noticed that the Suna ninjas had backed to the wall while the noble was dead. A frown formed on his face as he saw the 2 Suna chunins. They were both wearing a gas mask to cover their nose and mouth. Fujin frowned and asked, "The explosion tag contained poison?" The Suna ninjas began laughing. One said, "That's right. Did you think that no one could stop you?" The other said, "This is a newly created poison. Your antidotes won't help you. Ha ha ha. If you want alive, surrender now." Fujin frowned. His eyes widened as he suddenly sensed 13 strong chakras approaching the room. He looked at the Suna chunins and said, "Good trap." He immediately disappeared from their line of sight. The Suna ninjas were surprised. One exclaimed, "Where did H?" His question was cut short as a punch pierced through his chest. His partner turned his head and saw in horror as a punch came straight at his face. He was too slow to even react. His last thought was, "So fast." The punch landed on his face and killed him as well. Immediately, the door was smashed as 3 Junins entered the room. Soon after, the walls were knocked out and even more Junins entered. Odaka was the last one to enter. They surrounded Fujin from all directions. All of them had consumed the antidote, and hence weren't concerned about the poison in the air. However, their expressions became ugly on seeing the dead chunnings. Fujin observed them and thought, 13 Junins. No. 12 Junins and an elite Junin. Now that's a good trap. A smile formed on his face. The Suna ninjas were surprised by his smile. It was as if he had caught them in a trap instead of what the actual situation was. Odaka stepped forward and said, I never expected that you would smile in this situation. Though I guess it isn't strange considering what you achieved. I really admire how many headaches you gave to Lord Kazekage. I saw a few of his hair turn grey within a month. Ha ha ha. Fujin was puzzled by his attitude. Odaka spoke casually as if he was meeting an old friend instead of an enemy. However, his eyes widened as he sensed dozens of ninjas heading towards them. He realized, I see, he is just wasting time. As expected of someone so old. Odaka chuckled and said, You sense them, huh? It doesn't matter. With the poison you inhaled, you will die the most painful and gruesome death. To be honest, I am very interested in knowing who you are. I wonder if you can satisfy this old man's request now, or if I will have to wait until you die. Fujin let out a chuckle and said, We will have to see who will die and who will live. He took a step forward and suddenly disappeared. Odaka's eyes widened. He shouted, Be careful, he is fast. Fujin appeared in front of a Junin. He was holding a kunai in each hand. He immediately stabbed towards the Junin's heart. The Junin immediately jumped backwards. The ones next to him immediately attacked Fujin. Fujin stopped his attack and used his 2 kunais to block their attacks. However, the ninjas in front of him weaved hand signs. Wind release air bullet jutsu. Fujin immediately pushed the attackers away and got out of the way. The bullets passed harmlessly and pierced through the walls. The Junin frowned as those rogue bullets could hit some of their reinforcements. Odaka observed Fujin and analyzed with a frown on his face. He is faster and stronger than an average Junin. Even among elite Junins, his speed and physical strength might be at the very top. But why is the poison not slowing him down? Is this his capability after being slowed, or does the poison not affect him for some reason? Odaka was taking Fujin lightly as his death was certain, but now he became doubtful. He immediately became very serious. As soon as Fujin landed in another spot, he was once again attacked by 3 Junins. Fujin blocked their attacks and tried attacking back, but they dodged him with perfect teamwork. Suddenly, all 3 backed away. Fujin's eyes widened as he noticed 2 ninjas building up their chakra while weaving hand signs. He wondered, do they not care about the mansion? He instantly backed off and concentrated his chakra as well. Wind release wind dragon jutsu. 2 massive wind dragons formed and dived at Fujin. However, Fujin wasn't much concerned. He had already deduced the jutsu by looking at their hand signs. Wind release infinite breakthrough jutsu. He poured 20% of his chakra into the jutsu. Extremely strong winds were breathed by Fujin. It hit the 2 wind dragons and dispersed it. The Suna Junins had grim expressions. They had the same thought. Is he from the land of wind, or are we? They all used their respective defensive moves. The walls of the mansion began collapsing. Fujin was about to pour even more chakra into the jutsu and cause maximum damage to the Suga ninjas by dismantling their defensive jutsus when he suddenly jumped towards his right and looked behind. His eyes widened as he saw the wooden horse behind him open its mouth wide and shoot hundreds of needles at him. Fujin continued blowing the infinite breakthrough, but this time, he used it towards his left so that his body would be pushed to his right. However, it was too late. A few needles grazed his left hand, and 2 needles pierced his left arm and stayed stuck in it. Fujin cursed, Shit. Chapter 271 Racing in the Desert. Chakra gathered in Fujin's eyes as he noticed the chakra threads controlling the wooden horse. He traced them back and his eyes landed on Odaka. He thought, a puppet master, I guess these needles are poisoned as well. I don't have much time. Seeing Fujin get hit improved the morale of the Suna Junins who were getting overwhelmed. Odaka also sighed in relief. However, Fujin's eyes quickly scanned through the Suna Junins and finally settled on one guy. He decided, this one. Though the winds were still flowing strongly in the mansion, Fujin flickered and appeared next to him. The Junin immediately moved backwards while swiping his kunai at Fujin. Fujin dropped the kunai in his hand and stopped his opponent by grabbing his wrist. At the same time, the ninjas nearby threw shurikens at Fujin from close range. A sigh escaped Fujin's mouth as he thought, sucks that they didn't come close. In the very next moment, he exploded. The eyes of the Junin whose arm was being grabbed widened in horror. He couldn't use any jutsu to defend himself, nor could he get away. His left arm was blown up. The explosion hit his body, burning his eyes and face. He was launched across the room and crashed into a wall. The shurikens that were thrown at Fujin were also launched back due to the explosion. However, everyone dodged them easily, but not a single person had a happy expression. Outside the mansion, people were going with their lives as usual. A few people who were around the mansion noticed the sounds of explosions and clashes inside the mansion and began wondering what was happening. Suddenly, a massive explosion occurred. A corner of the mansion was blown up. Pieces of stone and concrete were sent flying for hundreds of meters in the city and crashed into a few unlucky houses and stores. Immediately, everyone began looking at the mansion, which stood at the center of the city. These included the ninjas that were hiding in the city, the civilians, and a young man sitting in a cafe. The young man's eyes glowed as he observed the mansion while going through the memories he received. A smirk formed on his face as he thought, "Not bad. Not bad at all. They set up a very good trap. The previous easy missions were indeed to lower my guard. If it was someone careless or arrogant, this trap would have been very successful. Now then." The young man was none other than Fujin. When Odaka approached him, Fujin had already finished observing the mansion and sent a shadow clone into the ground to attack the mansion. Fujin's eyes moved rapidly as he spotted 4 amber ninjas who were observing him from different locations. At the moment of the explosion, they stopped looking at him and watched the mansion. Fujin took the opportunity and flickered immediately. He appeared behind an amber ninja and pierced a kunai through his throat. Before the ambu could realize that someone killed him, he flickered behind the next amber ninja and repeated the same. The ambu were located quite far away from each other, so they didn't notice their comrades falling. However, they had a job to spy on Fujin. They turned their attention back to him, only to notice him not being in his spot. They immediately became alert. However, another one of them was killed by Fujin. The final ambu noticed someone killing a fellow ambu member through the corner of his eye. He was shocked. He immediately grabbed his kunai. Fujin flickered once again and appeared behind the last ambu. The ambu quickly turned around and used his kunai to stop Fujin's attack. The 2 kunai clashed, creating a loud sound. Inside the mansion, one Junin asked, "Did he die?" As the dust began settling, Odaka walked ahead and said with a grim expression, "I guess not. He was a shadow clone. No wonder the poison had no effect on him." The Junins immediately went silent. Finally, one asked, "Did we get toyed with by a mere clone?" Everyone knew the answer, but everyone was silent. Suddenly, their silence was broken by the loud sound of 2 kunai clashing. Everyone looked out of the hole the explosion had created and noticed an ambu ninja fighting with someone. Fujin was surprised by the loudness of the sound. He wondered, is his kunai made of something that creates a loud noise? But what's the use of such a loud kunai? The Suna Ember sighed in relief. He thought, "I'm glad I kept this kunai with me for emergencies. Now everyone will know that he is here." However, his relief was short-lived. Fujin shot an air bullet at his forehead at point blank. The amber had no time to dodge. A hole was left in his forehead as he dropped dead. However, the loud sound had done its job. Over 100 ninjas were staring at Fujin. The Junins, led by Odaka, immediately flickered towards Fujin. Yura and his subordinates were close to Fujin as well. They quickly moved towards him as well. Fujin watched them as his body was enveloped in wind. Odaka's eyes widened. Dozens of poisoned needles appeared in his hands, and he threw them all at Fujin. However, before they could reach him, Fujin had already disappeared. The Junins all landed where Fujin was standing. Immediately wind enveloped them as well as they weaved hand seals and cursed, "Do you think only you know the wind instantaneous body jutsu?" Immediately, all the Junins used the same jutsu and began their chase. Apart from these 12, the others in the city who could use that jutsu began the chase as well. Fujin turned around and noticed a few dozen ninjas chasing after him. He thought, the area around the city is a complete desert. There is nothing that can hide me. If this was the land of fire, they wouldn't even know where to chase me. Still, it's fine. The chase depends on the expertise in this jutsu and stamina. I'll just keep running until they can't keep up anymore. Fujin looked ahead and continued running. Apart from this, he had another choice. That was to use shadow clones and split in different directions. It would force the Suna ninjas to split up as well. He could then hunt them one by one. Fujin did think of this idea, but he dismissed it immediately. He thought, though I could kill a good number of them, it's too risky. My shadow clones can't be poisoned, but I can be. I'd prefer to not get poisoned in this desert. After all, poison is Suna's speciality. Though it wasn't a match for Tsunade, I'm no Tsunade. Avoiding getting poisoned is the only method for me. Over the last couple of years, Fujin's knowledge about medical jutsus, the human body and poisons had increased a lot, but he wasn't arrogant enough to think that it would be anywhere close to competing against Suna. The Suna ninjas chasing Fujin had already split into groups. At the forefront was Manabu. Behind him were Yura, Odaka and Eagle. The Junins were behind them in smaller groups of their own. Though they could use the jutsu, the amount of time needed and the distance they could cover was different for everyone. Every Sona ninja had a grim face as they noticed Fujin getting further and further away at every second. One of the Junins cursed, "What the hell, how does he flicker by more than a kilometer every time? And why does his jutsu activate instantly?" The one next to him muttered. "It's almost as if the wind gods have all blessed him." They weren't the only ones with that thought. Manabu was upset as well. He was one of the strongest wind users in Sonokakure. He was quite prideful about his expertise in wind manipulation. He thought, "If not for the Magnet Keki Genkai, even Rasa wouldn't be a match for my wind release. Who is this ninja?" Fujin used the jutsu 10 times consecutively. He was about to use it again when he suddenly stopped and disrupted his chakra. Immediately, the scene in front of him changed. A dozen ninjas appeared in front of him. He was alarmed by the situation and wondered, why the hell would they set up an ambush all the way out here? Manabu, Odaka and the rest noticed it and sighed in relief. The reinforcements sent by Rasa had arrived when Fujin was wasting time in Shongto City. Manabu thought, he finally encountered one of the squads. I was afraid he was going to run straight through the net we set up. After all, how could anyone catch anyone who moves a kilometer with every step? However, it looks like he has used up all his luck. Of all the squads to encounter, he encountered that monster. Chapter 272 Unleashing the Monster. The 12 Suna ninjas stared at Fujin. The one standing at the front and who set up the genjutsu was Susumu, an elite Junin. He chuckled and said, "You must have had horrible luck to encounter us. After today, even your bones won't remain." The others chuckled as well. Fujin didn't bother arguing against them. After all, he could see the reason why they were so cocky. It was a young boy, standing in the midst of their ranks. The boy had fair skin, short, spiky and red hair and emerald green eyes with dark rings giving him a distinct look. In addition, there was a gourd on his back which was too big for his size, Fujin thought, facing Gaara in a desert full of sand. Indeed, my luck would have been horrible had he been older. However, at this age, is Rasa out of his mind sending his 10-year-old kid and Suna's only Jinwekuric against me? If I didn't already know the future, I'd be very tempted to kill him right here, and unless he released Shokoko, I doubt he'd have any chance of survival either. Unlike Fujin, Gaara didn't waste any time thinking. Sand poured out of his gourd and immediately moved towards Fujin. Fujin was about to flicker when he felt something unusual. He immediately disrupted his chakra and moved out of the way while looking at Susumu. Susumu grinned and said, "With me here, you should forget about being able to escape. Gaara-sama, attack without restraint. I'll ensure that he can't escape." Gaara ignored his words and kept attacking. Fujin dodged while thinking, "Annoying, he uses genjutsu right when I am about to use a jutsu. Though I can break it right away, it's dangerous. After all, who knows how I will use the jutsu when under a genjutsu? This level of genjutsu, he must be Sabaku Susumu, one of Rasa's cousins, and probably the strongest genjutsu user from Suna. But how is he affecting my chakra?" Susumu was very confident about trapping Fujin. However, his smile disappeared as he noticed that Fujin kept avoiding Gaara's sand every time. Even though Fujin couldn't use any jutsu, he wasn't very concerned. His normal speed far exceeded the speed of Gaara's sand. Not a single attack came close to hurting him. However, as Fujin was dodging the sand, Manabu finally caught up. Fujin looked back and frowned. "At this rate, I'll be surrounded by hundreds of ninjas." His eyes began glowing as he focused chakra in them. Gaara was becoming impatient. He sent all the sand out of his gourd. It formed into small pebble-sized balls and rained down at Fujin. Fujin got out of range of the attack with ease once again as he observed, "I see this guy is leaking his chakra into the wind. He is using the air I breathe to slowly affect my chakra network and make me fall into a genjutsu. This shouldn't be enough to make me fall under a genjutsu, but he probably increases the chakra right when I'm busy refining my chakra to use a jutsu." A sparkle appeared in Fujin's eyes as he looked at Susumu. His look towards him had changed. He no longer viewed Susumu as an obstruction and instead viewed him as a delicacy. A shiver passed through Susumu's spine as he wondered, why is he looking at me like this? Don't tell me he swings that way. Still, shouldn't he be concerned about Gaara? Wind release air bullet jutsu. Manabu noticed that Fujin was focusing on Gaara and Susumu. He had no intention of getting in Gaara's way, so he maintained distance and fired 15 air bullets at Fujin. Fujin noticed the attack and dodged once again. However, Gaara was annoyed. Normally, everyone would be terrified of him and his sand. However, not only was Fujin not afraid, he didn't even give Gera a second glance. It was as if Fujin didn't consider him a threat at all. Gera exerted more chakra. Hundreds of sandballs rained at Fujin, who nimbly dodged while emitting his own chakra into the air to neutralize Susumu's threat. Susumu immediately sensed Fujin's chakra and was shocked. However, before he could do anything, Gera shouted, "Desert coffin." While Fujin was dodging the sand shower, Gera led him towards where his sand was. Fujin was surrounded on all sides. For the second time, Fujin looked into Gera's eyes. A frown formed on Gera's face as he muttered, "Why isn't he afraid of me?" Mother, in anger, the sand began moving much faster. However, Fujin, who was maintaining eye contact, suddenly disappeared. He reappeared far outside the little trap Gera had created. Susumu shouted, "Impossible, how did you use a jutsu?" He wondered, "Even if he has seen through my technique, he hasn't broken it yet, so how did he flicker?" Manobu flickered behind Fujin with a grim expression and attacked Fujin with a kunai. Fujin grabbed his kunai and hit Manobu's kunai and jumped backwards immediately. Manobu did the same as Gera's sand appeared between the two of them. Manobu said, "He didn't use a jutsu, that is his raw speed." Susumu was shocked. He looked at Fujin again and wondered, "That's his normal speed. No wonder he has been so successful in his assassinations. We have to kill him here, otherwise he will become a huge headache for Suna." As they were wondering how to deal with Fujin, Adaka and Eagle arrived and joined Manobu. Yura too arrived but stayed back and began coordinating the ninjas and establishing new perimeters to ensure that Fujin couldn't escape. However, unlike the level-headed Junins, one person had no patience. He was incredibly annoyed by how dismissive Fujin was of him. Gera shouted, "Sand tsunami." Immediately, the sand in the desert began moving. It formed into a wave of tsunami and headed towards Fujin. However, instead of terror, there was a smile on Fujin's face as he thought, "Finally, he messed up. I was worried after seeing the puppet master." The Suna Junins noticed the tsunami and had grim expressions. The jutsu covered a wide area. All of them were targeted as well. They immediately moved away. The remaining 10 ninjas from the ambush squad were standing behind Gera and hence were safe from the tsunami. However, they began sweating in fear due to the scale of the attack. Fujin looked at Susumu and decided, "I was planning to leave and never return here. But since you decided to keep me here, I might as well have some fun." Fujin disrupted his chakra once again and exerted a huge amount of chakra. Susumu noticed the chakra build up and immediately cursed, "Shit, he will run away," even before he could complete his statement. Fujin disappeared. The Suna ninjas wanted to stop him, but the sand tsunami severely restricted their movement. The Suna ninjas, who were still rushing towards Fujin, stopped and dispersed out of the attack's way. Odaka expanded his chakra field and tried to sense Fujin. However, he could no longer sense him. Odaka frowned and said, "He is gone. I can't sense him anymore. It was a mistake to include Gera in such an important mission. He doesn't have the tactical know-how yet to fight at this level." The others silently agreed. Eagle said, "Luckily Yura began establishing a new perimeter. We can still catch up with him if he gets stalled." However, Manobu, Odaka and Susumu didn't share the same opinion. They had all engaged with Fujin. His speed was too fast for anyone under the elite Junin level to handle. Excluding them, there were only 2 more elite Junins around the city, and neither were stationed in that direction. Though they were upset that Fujin had gotten away, they had another matter to take care of. The sand tsunami was approaching them rapidly. They immediately flickered out of the way. Gera, who created this mess, grinned and said, "That's it. Run away from me." As soon as he said it, the sand around him moved quickly and formed a sand wall on his left side. Gera was shocked and turned his head to the left. His eyes widened as he saw 6 holes in the sand wall. 6 air bullets pierced through the thin layer of sand and grazed Gera's arms and chest. Gera's eyes widened in horror as a red line appeared across his chest. His arms also began bleeding. He muttered, "What is this? Is this blood? My..." Immediately he shouted as loudly as he could, "Blood, my blood!" The Suna Junins, who were still dodging the sand tsunami, were shocked as they felt a thick bloodlist and heard Gerrit's screams. Susumu asked in terror, "Gera is injured? How?" The others were horrified too. The sand tsunami was just a minor inconvenience. If they didn't have to chase after Fujin, this jutsu wouldn't have any effect on them. However, they began sweating in fear at the thought of Gera losing control. The ones who had it worst were the 10 Suna ninjas who were behind Gera. Their legs began shivering in terror. A few fell on the ground. The ones who could stand began running away. Chapter 273: A complex battle. Unlike what Odaka had thought, Fujin hadn't run away. Instead, he just hid his chakra signature, and thanks to the cover provided by the sand tsunami, no one could see, hear or smell him. He immediately attacked Gara with the intention of making him bleed. However, he was surprised as he thought, the air bullets breaking through is reasonable. After all, the sand that defended him was too little. But why did he get injured so much? Doesn't he have the sand armor? Fujin observed him properly and realized, I guess he hasn't created that technique yet. He turned his attention towards the Suna ninjas on the other side of that tsunami and muttered, well, sucks to be you guys. Odaka activated his chakra field once again. His eyes widened as he shouted, that assassin is still here. Bastard hid his chakra signature. Fujin detected the chakra field and immediately used Wind Instantaneous Body Jutsu. Odaka sensed Fujin getting farther away and said, he escaped. Minobu asked, are you sure that he didn't hide his chakra again? It'll be annoying if he interferes when we are stopping Gara. Odaka replied, yes, last time his chakra signature just disappeared. This time I sensed him leaving. Besides, I doubt he would want to stay when Gara is losing control. They could still hear Gara's screams as his body began transforming. The sand tsunami had lost its power and was settling down, but other than Eagle and the 3 elite Junins, the rest stayed away in fear. Susumu moved towards Gara while weaving hand signs. Minobu shouted, don't let him fall asleep. Susumu already knew it. He reached as close to Gara as he could and completed his hand signs. Demise of the rebirth. Despite being partially transformed, the Genjutsu hit Gara as the Genjutsu took hold. A serene sensation washed over him, like a gentle breeze on summer's eve. In an instant his tumultuous emotions were caressed and quelled. It was as if the weight of anger, hatred, pain and panic were lifted. The world around him transformed into a dreamland adorned by sakura blossoms. As Gara watched the sakura petals floating with the wind, he felt a soothing sensation. The illusion cocooned him in a realm of tranquility, offering respite from the burdens of reality. For a fleeting moment, he found solace in the beauty of this ephemeral sanctuary. Unfortunately, he couldn't stay in this world forever. A wave of anger burned in his heart as Shikoku transferred his chakra into Gara's body to break the illusion and further transform the boy. Susumu and the rest knew that the Genjutsu wouldn't hold a Jinwekurick down for long. When Gara opened his eyes, he saw 4 puppets surrounding him. His body was tied with metal strings held by the puppets, restricting his mobility. Gara roared in rage as he began struggling. Odaka gritted his teeth and increased his control on his puppets to ensure that they wouldn't be sent flying. Fortunately, he wasn't alone. Minobu jumped high in the sky and blew an intense wind on Gara. Gara's knees bent, he felt an intense pressure falling down on him continuously. The Suna ninja sighed in relief on seeing Gara being pinned down. However, Gara opened his eyes and stared at Minobu. Minobu immediately had a bad feeling. The sand under Gara's feet began moving. It instantly reached Minobu. Fortunately, Minobu was prepared and flickered out of the way. Gara's eyes moved and landed on Odaka. Odaka immediately jumped as he felt the sand under his feet move. As soon as he jumped, multiple tentacles made of sand appeared and moved towards Odaka. Realizing the danger, Odaka opened a scroll and made a hand seal. Immediately, a huge turtle made of wood and metal appeared between him and the sand. The sand hit the belly of the turtle while Odaka landed on its back and immediately jumped towards Minobu. The sand tentacles were stopped. However, more sand moved and completely engulfed the turtle. Odaka's remaining 4 puppets were also engulfed and crushed by sand. He sighed and muttered, this is going to be a painful fight. Minobu nodded. The cost of building high-quality puppets was quite high. He said, fortunately, we bought enough time. Odaka nodded as he saw that Susumu had returned with 2 ninjas behind him. Susumu looked at the situation and instructed, we will hold him down. As soon as we do, use your techniques to seal him temporarily. The 2 ninjas nodded nervously. They were sent along with Susumu and Gara in case such a scenario happened. However, despite being trained, they had very little experience in sealing a Jinwekurick. After all, if something went wrong in Suna, Rasa would take care of it. They would have no reason to act. Odaka, Minobu and Susumu began fighting Gara again. Meanwhile, Eagle stood next to the 2 sealing ninjas to ensure that Gara wouldn't harm them. After 5 minutes of intense battle, they finally managed to pin Gara down once again. Susumu shouted, now immediately. The 2 sealing ninjas summoned and opened a giant roll of cloth binding technique. The cloth moved towards Gara and began wrapping itself around it. Gara struggled, but he couldn't get out of it. In a few seconds, he was completely covered by the cloth. The Suna ninjas finally sighed in relief. Gera was stopped. They and the city close to them were safe. Susumu grabbed a ceiling tag and walked towards Gera in order to ensure that he couldn't break free. However, his eyes widened. He looked down at his chest in fear and disbelief. A kunai that was dyed in blood had pierced through his heart. The Suna ninjas were shocked as well. A second ago they were happy that Gera was sealed. Now, they watched in disbelief as the strongest genjutsu specialist in Suna closed his eyes and passed away. However, Fujin had no expression on his face. He didn't waste any time celebrating and instead looked at Manabu and Odaka. Wind release infinite breakthrough jutsu. A massive windstorm was shot out towards them. Odaka hurriedly summoned a defensive puppet and the two hid behind it. However, both had grim expressions. Manabu asked, "Didn't you say that he ran away?" Odaka answered, "I definitely sensed him running away, unless he kept hiding and sent a shadow clone away to fool me. Or maybe he ran away and returned while hiding his chakra. After all, we were busy stopping Gera." Manabu didn't question any further. After all, it was pointless. He said, "This scum is very cunning. We were on guard while fighting Gera. If he had attacked then, Susumu would have dodged or blocked him. Instead, he waited until we had won and dropped our guard momentarily." Odaka nodded and said, "He almost reminds me of Yellow Flash. In the Third War, we lost most of our elite Junins to his sneak attacks. Other than Tsunade, he was the main reason that we had to accept our defeat and form an alliance with Konoha." Manabu and Odaka's expressions became even uglier. They had speculated that the assassin was from Konoha. Both thought, if Konoha has gained such a strong fighter who is willing to go to such an extreme during peacetime, then a war with them would prove extremely costly. While Manabu and Odaka were hiding from the storm, Eagle took the opportunity to flicker behind Fujin and attacked him with his kunai. However, Fujin withdrew the kunai from Susumu's heart and blocked the attack. Wind release air bullet jutsu. Eagle's eyes widened as he noticed the attack. He immediately jumped out of the way. Fujin let him go and instead spat out a fire on the cloth that had sealed Gera. The two ceiling ninjas shouted in horror, "No, don't!" Unfortunately, Fujin had no intention to listen to them. Eagle's eyes widened as well. He immediately began weaving hand signs and building up his chakra. However, before he could complete his hand signs, he was forced to jump backwards. A kunai grazed past his left forearm, leaving a half-foot-long cut in it. He winced in pain but kept weaving hand signs. Water release waterfall jutsu. Despite acting as fast as he could, the delay due to the pain meant that the cloth was already set on fire. A second later, a huge waterfall crashed down on the fire and doused it. At the same time, Manabu launched his own infinite breakthrough jutsu and neutralized Fujin's attack. He and Odaka appeared next to Eagle and asked, "Where is the assassin?" Eagle said, "He is TH." His words were stuck in his mouth as he noticed that Fujin and Susumu's dead body had both disappeared. However, before they could investigate, a furious roar was heard through the desert. The Suna ninjas looked where Gera was sealed in grim expression as he broke out of the binding cloth. They began fighting him once again. Chapter 274. An opportunity. Manabu and Odaka led the fight to suppress Gera once again. However, without Susumu, and with the added threat of an assassin, the fight became much more difficult. Manabu shouted, "Yura, take command of others and encircle Gera. Have sensors monitor the battlefield and immediately report if anyone senses that assassin." Being struck once, Manabu didn't want to risk getting attacked again. Suna's losses were already terrible. In its entire history, Suna had experienced such losses during peacetime very few times. If he and Odaka were also to die, then Suna would be in a terrible position. Not to mention, the assassin could also target their only Jinwekirik. As the Suna ninjas entered into a bitter struggle, the source of their suffering had already flickered tens of kilometers away. Fujin finally stopped and let out a sigh. He muttered, "What a mess. First, they let me kill nobles without any obstruction, and then they suddenly have over 100 ninjas defending one remote city, with their Jinwekirik standing right on my escape route. If I didn't know how impulsive Gera was, I could have been in a pinch." He looked at Susumu's dead body in his hand and muttered, "Though it's not all bad, my genjutsu level was stuck for a long time. Other than the Bringer of Darkness, I don't have a high-level genjutsu that could create a significant impact in battle. I was wondering if I could use the wind to somehow use genjutsu. Sadly, the Ember duties didn't leave me with much time, but now it seems to be a good thing. With his jutsus as the base, I would easily master high-level genjutsu in no time." Fujin carefully stored Susumu's body. He had no intention of trying to read his memories by himself. He looked back towards where the sand shinobi were fighting and analyzed. In this battle, I only used wind and fire jutsus. Apart from it, I also exposed my high speed, strength and expertise in chakra control. Flickering and assassination. Sigh, it's a little more than what I planned to expose. But I did manage to keep my earth jutsus, vacuum jutsus, sword skills and chakra flow a secret. Even if they investigate, they wouldn't analyze that this was me anytime soon. Though once I begin gaining fame, it won't be that difficult for their suspicions to fall on me. Fujin sighed. He could have never imagined that such a distant city would have an ambush made of one Jin Rhetoric, 3 elite Junins, dozens of Junins, and hundreds of ninjas. He thought, I should have quit after burning the food storage. Fujin weaved a few hand signs and slammed his hand on the ground. A summoning jutsu smoke appeared in front of Fujin. It slowly dispersed, exposing a large saber holding the bloody leg of some wild animal in his mouth. He looked around and saw Fujin. Fujin said with a smile, Kaito, it's good to see you again. Kaito continued eating as he asked, Fujin, why did you call me? Fujin replied, I am deep in enemy territory and have no idea how many are hiding around in ambush. Give me a lift. Kaito continued eating the leg and said, sure, give me a minute. He swallowed the entire leg and then spat out the bones and said, get on. Fujin disappeared and appeared on his back. Kaito jumped high and spread his wings wide. He flapped it a few times and quickly rose above the clouds. He looked below towards where Gaara was and said, your enemy seems quite strong. I can feel his chakra and bloodlust all the way up here. Unlike Kato, Fujin couldn't feel anything. He said, it's a Jin Rhetoric, a human who hosts a tailed beast. That said, he is a child and has lost control. If he didn't, I'd be in deep trouble. Kaito nodded. Just based on the chakra fluctuations, he had no will to confront that being. He immediately began flying away toward the east. Fujin lay down on his back while enjoying the fresh air and gentle breeze. The last few weeks had been too tedious. He was on guard at all times, due to being in enemy territory. Fujin closed his eyes and began meditating. Despite not having any seals, Fujin had noticed long back that meditating while flying above the clouds was much more effective than meditating in his meditation room. In addition, it had a soothing effect on his mind. In a world with ceaseless conflict and incessant schemes, he cherished this feeling. Unlike Fujin's calm mind, the deserts he flew over were in turmoil. After a long struggle, Minobu and Adaka managed to stop Gaara's rampage and returned him to his normal state. Unfortunately, the lives of 4 Chunins and 1 Junin were lost in the process. Round them, hundreds of Suna ninjas were establishing a new perimeter. Dozens of sensors moved continuously in the desert to find where the assassin was hiding. Messenger birds were constantly being sent to keep everyone informed about the situation. A bit further from them, tens of thousands of people were migrating across the desert from Shunkto to nearby towns and villages. Had the protection of the Suna ninjas. Hiding among them was the family of the dead noble Toshio. However, Fujin would have nothing to do with it. He had already left the entire matter behind him. Rasa and the Sonogakure Council would have to handle the aftermath of Fujin's actions. If they decide to retaliate, then Shikaku and Hiruzen would have to face the consequences of not properly defining Fujin's mission parameters. Fujin flew on Kaito's back for half a day. They left the land of wind behind and entered the land of rivers undetected. Kaito found an abandoned hill and finally landed. He asked, "Don't you want a lift all the way back home?" Fujin shook his head and thought, "Very few people know I have a summon. And even fewer know what my summon is, or what their abilities are. Though I don't intend to hide them like my lightning jutsus, it's good to have another good trump card." Fujin replied, "No need, I can make the remaining journey myself as there shouldn't be any enemies here." Kaito replied, "All right." He disappeared in a cloud of smoke and returned to his home. Meanwhile, Fujin stretched for a bit and was about to move towards the land of fire when he heard a loud explosion. He turned his head to the left and squinted his eyes. Round 3 kilometers from his location, a forest fire had been started. He squinted his eyes and observed the location and analyzed. A fight, at this time of the night. I wonder what's going on. He suppressed his chakra signature and flickered towards the location. His chakra reserves had already recovered and he didn't sense any terrible chakra. So he wasn't very worried. In the forests, 5 masked people were chasing after a man. The man was injured. There were multiple cuts on his body. In addition, his left hand had a huge burn mark due to an explosion. One of the masked men shouted, "Shigeki, stop running and face consequences for your actions." Shigeki didn't say anything and continued running. His condition wasn't good. The masked men weren't angry. Instead, they looked at Shigeki with ridicule. They could have killed him long back. However, they were just having fun. Shigeki was aware of it. However, he continued running while praying. Please give me one chance, please. As long as I survive, I'll return stronger than ever. I'll avenge my family and kill that bastard. Fortunately, or unfortunately, the direction he was running in was where Fujin had landed. Fujin reached the location quickly and observed from a distance. None of the 6 ninjas sensed his arrival. Fujin analyzed. These 5 masked ninjas are from the special forces of Tanagakuka, and is that Kusei Shigeki? Why are they chasing their own Junin? Fujin had interacted with Shigeki a couple of times during his Ambu missions. He had a good impression of him. The man was decently strong for someone who wasn't from any major village and didn't have any strong bloodline. In addition, he was smart, loyal to his village, and capable of leading large squads. Fujin followed them stealthily. Within a couple of minutes, he wondered, did he do something that irked the leaders of Tanagakuka, or the Land of River? The more he chased, the more sure Fujin became of his speculation, especially after he observed Shigeki's facial expressions. A smile appeared on his face as he thought, this is a good opportunity. I was hoping to find someone who was capable and in a desperate situation. However, his smile faded away and was replaced with a frown as he thought, but this is too soon. I am not ready. I haven't finalized my plans or even have any concrete goals as of now. Chapter 275 Shaidun. The masked men continued chasing Shigeki, while occasionally throwing shurikens and explosion tags at him. Fujin followed them patiently for 45 minutes. He had changed his attire and got himself a new mask. Finally, one of the masked men stopped laughing and said, "He's reaching close to a cliff. He might try to jump off. Enough fun. Let's kill him now. We still have to bring his dead body back. Otherwise, Kanji-sama might kill us as well." The other masked men got serious as well and said, "Yes, Captain." Immediately their speed increased. Shigeki noticed the cliff as well. He immediately began running towards it while thinking, if they catch me, I'll die. I will try my luck by jumping off the cliff. If I survive, I will train and slaughter Kanji, his son, and his entire family. Unfortunately, one of the masked men appeared next to him. Shigeki's eyes widened. He immediately punched him. However, the masked man ducked and kicked his left leg, which had a huge burn mark. Shigeki screamed in pain. He lost his balance and fell on his face and slid across the ground. The fall aggravated his existing injuries and inflicted fresh ones that began bleeding as well. Despite the pain, he gritted his teeth and got up. However, as soon as he did, he saw the 5 masked ninjas standing in front of him. The captain raised his kunai and said, "Farewell, Shigeki." He swung his kunai at Shigeki's neck. Tears rolled down Shigeki's cheeks as he shouted, "Just give me one chance." The masked ninjas had a smirk on their faces. They had no mercy for Shigeki. Just when the kunai was about to cut his neck, the masked man's hand lost power. The kunai hit Shigeki's neck but caused no injury, as it didn't have enough force to cut through. Meanwhile, Shigeki's eyes were wide open in shock. As if answering his prayers, the heads of all 5 masked ninjas were sent flying in an instant. In a second, their lifeless bodies collapsed to the ground. Suddenly, Shigeki felt a chill down his spine. He didn't dare move as he felt a sword resting on his neck. He felt that if he made any slight movement, his head would roll over just like others. He heard a cold voice asking, "Give you a chance for what?" He immediately said, "One of the elders in Tanagakuka killed my entire family. I want a chance to live so that I can get stronger and get justice for my wife and daughter." Fujin was puzzled. He asked, "Why did he kill them?" Shigeki was silent. Tears rolled down his cheeks. His voice lost all spirit as he said, "His drunk son raped my daughter. He didn't know she was my daughter. In a rage, I beat him up and mutilated him to ensure that he can't do something so heinous to anyone else. I wanted to kill him as well, but I was stopped by my colleagues. That's when my tragedy began. Kanji couldn't retaliate at first as my colleagues backed me. Instead, he showed that he was upset with his son and scolded him. But in reality, he was plotting revenge. Slowly, Kanji made numerous allegations about me and spread ill rumors. When my reputation had fallen enough, his personal ninjas made a move against my family when I was out on a mission. They ambushed me as well, due to which I couldn't fight back." He stopped talking and broke down. Fujin sighed secretly but kept his sword on his neck. He thought, no wonder he is in such bad shape. Although Fujin knew about Shigeki, he wasn't aware of his family, but he knew that Shigeki was just in his early 30s. He didn't need to think much to understand what his daughter might have gone through. He let Shigeki cry out for some time. Finally, Shigeki calmed down. he asked. Are you going to kill me? Fujin didn't answer. Shigeki begged, could you please let me live for some time? I will get justice for my family and then kill myself. If not, could you please kill Kanji and his son after you kill me? Fujin didn't answer and asked, how will you kill your way into Tanagaka in your condition? Shigeki replied, I am not strong enough yet. I will train until I can get justice for my family. Fujin chuckled and said, strong enough to kill your way into a hidden village? You are too old for having such silly dreams, but I have a proposition for you. I was looking for a capable man to recruit to help me run my organization. You might be suitable for that job. As long as you do a good job, I'll help you get your justice, either by yourself if you get sufficiently strong enough or through my hands. What do you say? Shigeki was surprised. He was expecting to die like the masked ninjas. Instead, their killer was trying to recruit him. He asked, what organization do you want to create? Fujin asked, does it matter as long as you get your justice? Shigeki went silent. However, after a couple of minutes he shook his head and said, no, I won't join any organization that would make others suffer, as I and my family did. Fujin withdrew his sword and replied, oh, it won't be that sort of an organization. No need to be bothered about that. Shigeki thought for a bit more. Fujin didn't disturb him. Finally, he got up with much struggle and bowed to Fujin and said, thank you for saving my life, Lord. I Kasai Shigeki. I'm willing to work for your organization as long as you help me get justice for my family. Fujin nodded and extended his palm towards Shigeki. Chakra appeared on his palm and began healing Shigeki. Shigeki's eyes widened. He thought, I never thought that someone who could kill without a second thought would be a medical ninja. The wounds on Shigeki were all external wounds. Fujin healed all his wounds in a few minutes. He said, follow me. Fujin began running. Shigeki, who was now fully healed but low on chakra, followed Fujin. The two ran through forests for over a couple of hours and arrived at a cave. Shigeki was puzzled. The cave was quite small and there was no one there. Fujin entered the cave. This was the same cave where he had stopped while heading to the Land of Wind. He inscribed a few more seals and created a few hiding rooms in the cave. He said, Shigeki, I have inscribed numerous seals in this cave. Unless someone accidentally enters the cave, no one will detect you. Even if someone does, you can hide in the 2 rooms I created. You will stay safe there. Shigeki asked in a puzzled voice, Lord, are there any other members from the organization here? Fujin replied, you can call me Shiden. No need for any honorifics. And no, currently, only you will be stationed here. Though I have recruited a few others, they are in different locations in other countries. You don't need to concern yourself with them for now. Shigeki nodded and asked, all right, but what am I supposed to do? Fujin replied, train of course. Don't you want to get justice? You are free to train however you want. My plans for you will need a few years to implement, so stay around this place. When I am ready, I will come here to look for you. Shigeki was surprised. He thought, a few years. He recalled his family and thought, it's fine. I am not strong enough yet. I don't know what Shiden's intentions are, but he saved my life and gave me a safe environment to live in and train. Besides, he seems to be a leader of a huge organization. With such a big organization, getting revenge will be very easy. He bowed down and said, thank you for saving my life and giving me a safe place, Shiden. I will wait here for you. Fujin nodded and said, good, I'll take my leave, train hard and get stronger. Shigeki replied with determination, I will. Fujin nodded once again before turning and flickering away. Shigeki raised his head only to see that Fujin was nowhere to be seen. He thought, he is even faster than I imagined him to be. He left the cave and looked at the stars in the sky. His eyes became watery as he muttered, wait a few years for me, I will fight for your justice and come to be with you. He wiped his tears and a determined expression appeared on his face. He wasted no time and began training. A few kilometers away, Fujin stopped moving. He quietly changed his clothes and for the first time in a couple of months, changed back to his real appearance. However, he had a weird expression on his face and his cheeks had a hint of redness. He muttered, since when did my ability to bullshit reach this level? Chapter 276 The Difficulties in Creating an Organization. Fujin was shocked at how much he had lied to Shigeki. What are the members of the organization? He was the only member. Heck, there wasn't any organization in the first place. The only place where it existed was Fujin's head. Fujin thought, I was so embarrassed by his questions and so embarrassed to say that he is the first member, that I couldn't help but lie. This way, he will just think that I am opening a new branch and not that I am starting the organization. Luckily, Fujin was wearing a mask while talking with him. Otherwise, no transformation jutsu could have hidden how embarrassed he felt while answering those questions. Fortunately, he was shameless enough to maintain a straight voice. Fujin sighed and muttered, "It doesn't feel good to fool a man who is in so much sorrow. Leave it, I'll help him get his revenge. That should be enough to clear whatever is still left of my conscience. Besides, the target is just an elder from a small village. I can assassinate him even now." Fujin began walking towards the land of fire while thinking. "I haven't thought of any details when it comes to my organization. My original motivation for creating an organization was very simple. If something unexpected happens, especially if that something isn't aligned with what I remember from the original series, and I need a safe place to escape to, then the organization should be my second home. The situation after fighting Darui was a perfect example of where an organization could have helped me a lot. It would have provided me with a third alternative, which would be much safer than the other two. In addition, the organization could help me collect information. It could also help in collecting rare materials, like elemental crystals, or perhaps even chakra metal. But this isn't enough. An organization needs to have a goal. If it is completely centered around me and my needs, then the organization wouldn't last long. It needs to have a goal to bind everyone together, and that goal also needs to complement my needs somehow. In addition, I also need to decide on the structure of the organization, the chain of command, how much authority people would have at each level of the organization, and so on. And most importantly, I need to have a method to control the people in my organization. A human's dream is never ending. Even if I rescue someone and provide them with a good life, he or she would only be grateful for a certain period of time. After that, they will begin wanting more. It'll be fine if I am at the helm of the organization. I could consistently brainwash them to keep following me. Unfortunately, I can't monitor them actively, as I will be in Konoha. I'll need another method. Orochimaru controls his subordinates through the curse seal. Danzo uses the cursed tongue eradication seal. As for Akatsuki, Pain is just too strong while Zetsu is the best scout, so no one will dare to oppose them. That said, despite their strength and skills, Orochimaru still betrayed them, and Itachi stayed as an undercover agent. I doubt I could be a bigger deterrent than someone with Rinnegan, so I will need to create a curse seal to put some restrictions on the members of my organization. Otherwise, I'm better off without an organization, and I can't copy a seal from the Konoha library. There is no way Hiruzen and Danzo wouldn't be able to negate every seal in there. Sigh, so much work. That is why I have been so reluctant to actually implement this idea. Fujin continued on his way as he muttered to himself, and this is just a basic problem. After all, I could resolve these issues by myself. The most critical issue is recruitment. Who should I recruit in the organization? I stay in Konoha, so I can't just recruit little kids like Orochimaru did and train them personally. I need some Junin level members to look after the organization while I am not there. It'd be best if that person is at elite Junin level so that they can handle any unexpected events while I'm not there. Unfortunately, I don't know anyone like that who I could recruit. Almost all of them are loyal to their village or too volatile to be trusted. There might have been some suitable ones shown in Naruto. Unfortunately, I can't recall anyone. Apart from the important events and some resources, my memory from my previous life is just too vague. Sigh, I guess I will have to just wait for events like today. If Shigeki trains seriously, then perhaps he could reach the elite Junin level. That'd probably be the best. Anyways, I'll leave this issue for the future. Regardless of whether I build a good organization or not, it won't be much use during the Fourth Great Ninja War. So I don't need to waste much time or effort on it until then. I can wait till I learn the Flying Thunder God and then begin considering this matter seriously. With teleportation, controlling an organization will become much easier. As he kept thinking deeply about this matter, Fujin entered the Land of Fire and reached Konoha the next evening. He went directly to Hiruzen's office and knocked on the door. Hiruzen was about to wrap up his work and leave when he heard the knock. He said, "Come in." Fujin entered. Hiruzen was surprised. He asked, "You are back so early?" Hiruzen thought. The news regarding the burning of the provision depot came just a few days ago. I expected him to create more chaos. Even if he didn't, the deserts would have been heavily monitored. How did he return so quickly? Fujin nodded and said, "Yeah, the place got very messy. It'll probably be better to call Commander Shikaku here. I have a lot of critical information to report." Hiruzen got the hint and looked at the Anbu ninjas hidden in the room. They nodded and immediately left. 3 stayed outside the room and kept watch while the last one went to call Shikaku. Hiruzen took a look at Fujin again and thought, "Now that I think about it, he had said that his summon could fly. I almost forgot about them. If he flew over, then it would make sense why he returned so quickly." Hiruzen asked, "So, how was your trip?" Fujin replied, "Not bad. I mostly stayed in Wind Capital. The city is much better looking than Fire Capital." Hiruzen nodded and said, "Yeah, in terms of beauty, it ranks second after Lightning Capital. Do you want to visit it next?" Fujin thought, "This old fox, it hasn't even been 5 minutes since I entered the village, and he already wants me out." Meanwhile, Hiruzen also looked at Fujin meaningfully and thought, ever since he left, the consumption rate of the wind crystals dropped several times. Though there were quite a few Ambu who left around that time, he is the most suspicious one. Fujin immediately shook his head and said, "Such missions don't suit me, Grandpa. It's the first time since I joined the academy that I haven't trained for over 2 months. My body feels so out of tune and unresponsive. I'll stick to elimination missions." Hiruzen let out a chuckle and thought, if he is indeed the one who uses them so much, then it's no surprise that he has no will to leave the village. Hiruzen casually inquired about random stuff until Shikoku arrived and closed the door. Shikoku looked at Fujin and recalled the reports he received a few days ago. His expression became very peculiar. Hiruzen made a hand seal and activated the seals in the room. No one could eavesdrop on them anymore. He looked at Fujin and said, "You can report now." Fujin nodded and became serious. He asked, "Did Kakashi-senpai report the mission to eliminate the bounty hunters?" Shikoku nodded and said, "He did. Just report about your activities in the Land of Wind." Fujin nodded and began reporting, "All right, I infiltrated the country and found a trading caravan. It was from the Land of Bird and protected by 4 ninjas from a mercenary group called Kiraga no Senson. I eliminated them and infiltrated the Wind Capital City using their disguises. Under that disguise, I eliminated 10 nobles on the list of nobles that were very loyal to Sunagakure. All of them were eliminated using wind sword jutsu. I also killed a few samurais and left a couple injured so that all suspicions will fall on Suna. I followed it up by killing family members of 12 other nobles who had good relations with Sunagakure a couple of weeks later. This was done while using the disguises of the Suna ninjas who came along with the elite Junin Bucky to investigate the previous killings, and I let the nobles see me and threatened them. Both these acts increased the resentment towards Suna among the nobles considerably. So you'll have to check the degree of resentment with the use of other spies. Unfortunately, that forced the 4th Kazekage to come to the Wind Capital City. He had a long meeting with the Wind Daimyo. I am not sure what deal they reached, so I decided that it won't be a good idea to act once again, as it might have destroyed the situation I created." Shikoku and Hiruzen nodded. They were aware of these developments. Though they didn't know the exact information, they had guessed Fujin's actions quite accurately. Unfortunately, they didn't have much clue about other events apart from the incident about provision depots. Neither was prepared for what Fujin was about to report. Chapter 277. Starting a war. Fujin continued. A couple of days later, 12 ninjas from Kiraga no Sensen came to the Wind Capital to investigate their missing ninjas. I took the opportunity to leave the city along with them. However, the Kazekage noticed us and probably got suspicious. He sent some Ambu to chase us. I led them deep into the desert and assassinated all 12 mercenaries and 12 Ambu. Shikoku and Hiruzen's eyes widened. Hiruzen thought, 12 Ambu, not bad at all. Even if I ignore all his other achievements, this alone should be more than enough to promote him. Meanwhile, Shikoku began sweating as he wondered, who the heck kills 12 enemy Ambu during a promotion mission for the Ambu captain post? It'd be an accomplishment even if they managed to kill 2. Fujin tossed a scroll at Shikoku and said, "This scroll has the dead bodies of those 24 ninjas. I am not sure if any memories are still there, but you can try to check them nonetheless." Shikoku caught it and nodded. He reluctantly said, "Good work, continue." Fujin continued reporting, "I didn't leave any evidence behind. So I don't think Suna knows what happened to these 12 missing Ambu. At best they could guess that they were killed by the mercenaries. Anyways, after killing them, I traveled to the western side of the Land of Wind. I first traveled to Subakuchuas. As per the instructions, I burnt one of the 2 provision depots entirely. I don't think any food was left behind, and I ended up killing at least 2 ninjas there. I am not sure if any more died after I left. I followed it up by killing 2 more nobles in the west who were listed and traveled to Shunkto City to kill the 3rd. However, the leading ninja there was quite smart. He set up a decoy and hid the noble. I killed the decoy and tried getting intel from the leading Chunin. But that guy was quite determined. He blew himself up. In order to find the real noble, I did a scheme. I disguised myself and my clones as Suna ninjas and announced that the assassin was dead. Then I spread rumors across the city that the noble was a coward who hid behind decoys and doesn't deserve to be a noble. In anger, the noble returned to the mansion. So I held a public execution for him and announced that he had cooperated with the assassin. In addition, I also announced that the Kazekage was upset with the city and decided to remove the protection provided by the Suna ninjas, and I immediately withdrew from the city. Shikoku and Hiruzen's eyes widened in shock as they immediately understood the impact of such an action. Shikoku almost cursed out, but Fujin continued speaking and said, the next day, around 80% of the people living in that city left and began migrating towards nearby villages and towns. They should be beginning to reach by now, so the news will soon spread and the Kazekage and the Wind Daimyo will soon begin receiving messages. At the same time, the resentment against Suna and Kazekage will spread among the cities in the west, so feel free to take advantage. Shikoku finally couldn't endure anymore and cut him off. He asked loudly, "You did what?" His face had a look of disbelief. Hiruzen's expression was serious as well. He was finding the situation quite amusing until then. However, Fujin's actions were outrageous. Fujin tilted his head and asked, "Is that an issue? I thought you wanted to create chaos in the land of wind and ruin Sunagakua's reputation in the eyes of the daimyo, nobles and citizens." Shikoku replied, "Yes, I wanted you to do that, but from your actions. Do you want to split the land of wind into two countries?" Shikoku's words made Fujin fall into thought. However, he soon shook his head and said, "That's not feasible. That place is crawling with Suna ninjas right now. If you want to do it, I'd recommend waiting for a few months or perhaps even a couple of years for the resentment to properly spread and for the Suna ninjas to withdraw. Then you can take action. But I am not interested in going there anymore. Considering the complexity, I'll recommend you go there yourself and oversee the entire operation." Shikoku's expression became dark. He cursed internally. "This brat," I was asking him sarcastically. Does he not get sarcasm, or is he messing with my head? He created such a huge mess and still wants me to create more. Who knows how those crazy bastards will react after suffering such a huge loss in peacetime? I'll have to plan the defense properly and actively monitor the situation for weeks or perhaps even months now. Of course, Fujin was messing with him. Though his expressions didn't change, he thought, "I managed to break Hiruzen's poker face numerous times. This is a first for Shikoku to lose his calm and stop acting lazy in front of me. Hey, looks like I overdid my mission. Oh well, I guess he will take some effort to describe mission parameters from now on instead of just being a lazy ass." Shikoku couldn't see beyond Fujin's poker face. However, if he could hear Fujin's thoughts, he would have lost control on the spot. The mission parameters were left vague to make the Ambu ninjas push themselves to achieve their best. It wasn't so that someone could start a war. Hiruzen was also looking at Shikoku's expression. He thought, if the situation wasn't so serious, I would have found his expressions hilarious. He looked at Fujin and asked, "Did you return after this?" Fujin shook his head and said, "No, despite the difficulty, that city didn't receive any reinforcements. I was confused as to why Suna hadn't sent reinforcements, so I decided to test out the next city as well. Unfortunately, that was a trap. I was attacked by 12 Junins and the puppeteer elite Junin. Odaka, the city itself had over 100 ninjas waiting for me." Shikoku and Hiruzen were shocked once again. Fujin continued, "I killed 1 Junin, 2 Chunnings and 4 Ambu ninjas before running away from the city. Unfortunately, many of them also knew wind instantaneous body jutsu, and the desert offered no cover. So they began chasing me. Though I was faster, there was an ambush squad waiting for me. The ambush squad was led by the elite Junin Sabaku Susumu. His Jin Jutsu prevented me from using my jutsus. In addition, his squad also had a Jin Wekarik. They stalled me, allowing a few Suna ninjas to catch up with me. Just when Hiruzen and Shikoku thought that they couldn't be surprised anymore, they were. Shikoku dumbfoundedly muttered, "The Jin Wekarik?" Hiruzen asked, "The Kazekage's son?" Fujin nodded. Shikoku had a very bad feeling. He thought, "I can feel it. Whatever he will say next will be very troublesome. Why didn't I give him proper mission parameters?" Unfortunately, there was no way for Shikoku to correct his error. Fujin continued, "Fortunately, the Jin Wekarik lost control over his emotions and did a stupid wide-range attack. I used the opportunity to injure him. That made him lose control over his tailed beast and began transforming. I used the distraction to kill Susumu and retreated from there. This time, neither Shikoku nor Hiruzen had any words to say. Both were left speechless by Fujin's achievements during the mission. Fujin enjoyed the expressions on their faces. It was a treat to watch. He tossed Shikaku another scroll and said, "This scroll has Susumu's body. I have preserved it properly. He could use genjutsu by emitting chakra into the wind. I want that jutsu." Shikaku looked at the scroll and looked back at Fujin as he thought. Not only did he kill an elite Junin, he also brought his body back. Does he want to be the Ambu captain or the Hokage? Still, this is good. Susumu's genjutsu methods were quite unique. If a few ninjas can learn it, Konoha's strength will increase once again. Hiruzen said, "You can't use those techniques in the open for the time being." Fujin nodded and said, "Yes, I'll ensure that there are no witnesses." Hiruzen nodded and asked, "Anything else?" His question alerted Shikaku once again. Fortunately, Fujin shook his head and answered, "No, I wanted to create more mess and kill a few more Junons in the desert. But the number of ninjas was too high, and I wasn't sure how much destruction the Jinwekuric could cause. So I withdrew." Shikaku finally let out a sigh of relief. He thought, "Thankfully he withdrew. I thought he killed dozens of more ninjas using the Jinwekuric as a distraction." Hiruzen also looked relieved. He stared at Fujin as he re-evaluated his strength and began thinking of a matter. Is he also a suitable candidate? Both Hiruzen and Shikoku were lost in thoughts. After a minute, Fujin looked at them with a deadpan expression and wondered, "Did they forget about me?" He asked, "Will I be promoted?" Both Shikoku and Hiruzen looked at him immediately. Shikoku cursed in his mind, "Do you think we would dare not promote you? If we give you another promotion mission, won't you directly start a war between the two countries?" Chapter 278. The Fifth Hokage. Hiruzen had the same thought as Shikoku. He didn't dare to imagine what Fujin might do the next time if they said that his performance was unsatisfactory. He quickly nodded and answered, "Your performance has been very good. You will be promoted. However, we haven't arranged any Ambu subordinates for you yet, so you will be an Ambu captain only in name." Fujin replied, "That's fine. I will be visiting the library. And I also need a break after such a long mission. Preferably at least 1 or 2 months long break to learn new seals and jutsus. Take your time, I'll file the report later. See ya." Fujin immediately disappeared from the room despite none of the doors and windows being open. Shikoku and Hiruzen looked at where Fujin was standing. Shikoku cursed in his heart. This brat, he created such a mess and didn't even stay to discuss how to handle it. And after giving me month-long headaches, he has the gall to ask for a month-long vacation. Meanwhile, Hiruzen thought, "Seals? Sigh, he will soon begin bugging me for flying Thunder God." Shikoku looked at Hiruzen and asked while sighing, "Lord Hokage, if we don't promote him and send him for such a mission again, do you think he will try to assassinate Rasa?" Hiruzen didn't reply and began considering it. After all, there was already an instance of a Kazekage disappearing. Unknown to him, the assassin's age back then wasn't much older than Fujin's current age. Hiruzen shook his head and said, "Unlikely, unless you specifically mention it." Regardless, his performance has been excellent. Shikoku was dumbfounded. He thought, "Does no one understand sarcasm?" He smiled bitterly and said, "It's not that his performance is excellent. Rather, it is too excellent. Making a Jinwekuric lose control and killing an elite Junin was a bit too much. Suna will be forced to retaliate, and they will likely retaliate in an extreme manner. Not to mention, in addition to that, he killed 16 Ambu ninjas, a few Junins, and likely dozens of Chonings and Jennings, and I still haven't considered the dead nobles, burned provision depot, or the stunt he pulled in Shunkto. In the history of Suna, they have only once taken a bigger loss than this during peacetime. And they started the third Great Ninja War. We have to be careful in case Rasa decides to start another war." However, Hiruzen shook his head immediately and said, "Oh, the situation is completely different. When the third Kazekage died, Suna was very vulnerable and Rasa's position as the fourth Kazekage wasn't very stable. In addition, they were surrounded by 3 major villages that were preparing for war. The current matter is an internal one and doesn't directly threaten their strength. And of the 3 major villages that surround them, one is in a formal alliance, and another is embroiled in a civil war, so they won't choose war right now." Shikoku analyzed Hiruzen's words and nodded. "That makes sense. I guess Suna will be a mess for a few months. They will either focus entirely on stabilizing the situation, or they might do it alongside sending Ambu units into our country. Regardless, once their mess is resolved, they will retaliate somehow. We have to be prepared." Hiruzen nodded and said, "We do. But we have time. Due to the mess that Fujin created, Rasa will be forced to deploy at least 1,000 Suna ninjas in the west to calm them down. In addition, he has also deployed a few hundred ninjas in the Wind Capital. The other cities might also ask for additional security as a precaution." And they will also have to scour the desert to look for the culprit. This will ensure that he can't make a big move for the time being, so you just need to prepare for the moves they make in the dark. No need to create any more trouble in the land of wind for now. Hopefully, their anger will fade away by the time these issues are sorted. However, the schemes they come up with have to be crushed. It's best if all Sunda ninjas who infiltrate the land of fire are killed. Fujin's actions, though provocative, are a good deterrent. If we stop their schemes, then they will be even more afraid of breaking the alliance. Shikoku sighed. He will have to work a lot and won't be able to laze around for the next few months. He said, all right. He began walking out. Hiruzen instructed, have a Yamanaka Junin read Susumu's memories and create a scroll describing his genjutsu jutsus and hand it to me. We won't be placing it in the library. Also, create a list of Junins who will benefit from learning these jutsus and can keep them a secret. Shikoku nodded and replied, I'll get to it. Lord Hokage, he left the room. As he sat alone, his previous thoughts surfaced in Hiruzen's mind as he wondered, could Fujin be a candidate for 5th Hokage? Hiruzen let out a sigh. The matter of selecting the 5th Hokage had been troubling him for years and he still didn't have any solution. He thought, it'd have been great if Jinna or Tsunade accepted this position. Unfortunately, neither have the will to do so. As for others, there is no one qualified. If I retire now, the next Hokage will be Danzo. That wouldn't be good for the village. Though he is loyal to the village, and his ambitions would benefit Konoha, he doesn't have the strength needed to fulfill his ambitions. Despite those Sharingans and Lord First's cells, I was hoping Kakashi would rise to the challenge and reach my level, seeing his potential. Iron Danzo worked in the background to increase his reputation and give him sufficient fame. Unfortunately, despite being looked at as the leader by the younger generation, he is still too weak. A frown formed on Hiruzen's face as he thought about Kakashi. In terms of talent, Kakashi doesn't lose out to even Minato. His growth trajectory was very fast, even exceeding my student's strength at his age. Unfortunately, ever since the Third Great Ninja War ended, his growth has stagnated. He hasn't trained enough and spends most of his time in front of the Memorial Stone or doing missions. Not to mention, according to the intel Itochi sent, I doubt Kakashi could win against any of the Akatsuki members. At the current rate, I guess Kakashi will need around 5 to 7 years to reach my level, unless something makes him feel like his strength isn't enough and he pushes himself once again. As for Fujin, I never considered him until now. Though his mission record is impeccable, he didn't fight anyone truly strong other than Kaminari. But with such a performance, he is far more capable than I expected, even if I consider that he used hit-and-run tactics and only used a sneak attack to kill Susumu. That is still quite good, especially if he can pull off something like this during a war. It could force Sunagakure to withdraw half their troops from the front lines. His crystal ball lit up and showed the scene inside section of the library. Hiruzen thought. As I expected, he has already started looking at the seals. Once he masters the seals in this section, he will come asking for Flying Thunder God. If he can master it, his threat on the battlefield will be no less than Minato, though it is a big if regardless. He has one advantage over Kakashi, he has a hunger to grow strong. Though he isn't as relentless as Guy, he still trains a lot and even asks for vacations to train. Unfortunately, he is quite young as well. He should be 14 soon. He will need 5 to 7 years to completely mature as well. Sigh, I'll have to hold my old bones together for the next 7 years. The only plus point is that we might have more than one option for the Hokage seat, a situation similar to when I and Minato were selected. With another sigh, Hiruzen stopped thinking about this matter. He got up and left the office. As soon as he left, Fujin flickered to Konoha's library. Though he had travelled non-stop for a day, he couldn't stop himself from visiting the library and checking out what all jutsus were available. He reached section while recalling Renjuro's words as he thought. Although Renjuro emphasized the importance of mastering rank C jutsus, I have long reached a bottleneck. I won't be able to improve those jutsus any further without investing significant time. It's time to learn the rank A jutsus. I hope the library doesn't disappoint me. With eyes full of expectations, Fujin stepped into section of the library. Chapter 279-58 Scrolls. Fujin entered section of the library and looked around. The size of this section was much larger than other sections. However, the number of scrolls in this section was the least. Fujin immediately began looking for wind jutsus. As he searched and collected the scrolls, he analyzed. I wonder if any rank A wind jutsu will be of any aid to me. After all, most of my rank B and C jutsus are as strong as rank A jutsus, due to super K-Graph them and yin-yang control. In a few minutes he grabbed all the wind scrolls and sat on a table. He analyzed. Not bad. I wasn't expecting many wind jutsus, considering how few were there in Section B. Fujin had found 6 scrolls. They were Blade of Wind Jutsu, Severing Pressure Jutsu, Wind Explosion, Clone Jutsu, Assassin's Rush Jutsu, Geyser Creation Jutsu, Summoning Giant Windmill Jutsu. Fujin decided to start with the one with which he was the most familiar. He opened the Blade of Wind Jutsu scroll and began reading. In a minute he thought, this jutsu is almost entirely similar to the Wind Sword Jutsu, just that the power, sharpness and speed have been increased slightly, and it also provides some defensive uses. Still, it should be very easy to learn. Fujin extended 2 fingers on his right hand. Immediately, the wind began flowing around them. A small 1-inch blade of wind appeared on top of them. Soon, that blade began increasing in size and reached 1 foot in size. Fujin analyzed it and nodded. This jutsu is down. I didn't even need to use the hand seals. I'll begin using this instead of Wind Sword Jutsu. Fujin kept the scroll back and turned his attention to the next jutsu. He analyzed as he read, the Wind Explosion Clone Jutsu. I tried creating this jutsu by myself by referencing the Shadow Clone Explosion Jutsu. I succeeded, but the damage output was very low. It was just barely higher than an explosion tag, unless I put in too much chakra. Unfortunately, I didn't get much free time after the amber training phase was over to work on this jutsu. Fujin read the entire scroll carefully and realized, oh, I see, I was going about this in the wrong direction. I was first creating a normal wind clone and then using its chakra to explode and generate sharp winds. But according to the scroll, the clone itself is created for the sole purpose of exploding. So it can explode faster and generate more powerful explosions. This is different from Shadow Clone Explosion. I wonder if I could modify shadow clones using these methods as well. Fujin kept the scroll and began reading the rest. He read the Severing Pressure scroll and shook his head. This scroll requires a fan to be used. Not suitable for me. Its lethality doesn't exceed my sword slashes, and its range doesn't exceed infinite breakthrough. I don't need it. Fujin opened the Assassin's Rush Jutsu scroll and began reading. His eyes immediately sparkled as he thought, nice, this is a great and very practical jutsu. I'll learn this after mastering the Wind Explosion Clone Jutsu. Fujin checked the last 2 jutsu scrolls as well and had mixed feelings. He analyzed. These jutsus are a bit difficult and have limited use, but they are quite strong. Summoning Giant Windmill is a jutsu similar to Rashomon Summoning. This jutsu was created by the second Kazi Kage as well. The jutsu summons a giant windmill that is around 3 stories tall from the ground, similar to Rashomon gates. However, instead of defense, this jutsu is for attacking. The blades of the windmill will spin rapidly and will form a strong wind flow that will pull everything towards the blades. If anyone gets caught in it, they will be chopped in pieces, a certain death. Unfortunately, even the user isn't spared from this wind flow, though it isn't an issue as I can hide underground, but I can't use this jutsu when I'm with allies. In addition, it is also heavy on chakra, and though the damage potential is high, it won't be effective against veteran ninjas. They will just hide underground or find something for support, so the only use of this jutsu is to clear cannon fodder when I'm fighting solo. Not very useful as I already have too many means of doing that. Other than running away, this is what I excel the most at. As for the Geyser Creation Jutsu, it is a bit complicated as it is based on a steam release jutsu from the Sakai clan. The jutsu has 2 phases. In the first phase, cracks and holes have to be created in the ground, and then we have to make hot steam erupt from the ground and blast whatever is in the way. However, this jutsu was modified. Instead of hot steam, I will have to make highly pressurized air erupt from the cracks in the ground. Instead of blasting and burning, it will cut the ones in the way, and since this jutsu comes from the underground, the opponent won't be able to hide underground to avoid the attack. I'll learn this jutsu as well. 2 new jutsus along with the Wind Explosion Clone Jutsu. Not bad. Unfortunately, it looks like Konoha's stock of wind jutsus isn't very high, or perhaps the number of rank A wind jutsus itself is quite low. Would make sense if even something as lethal as the wind vacuum technique is only rank B. Fujin kept the wind scrolls back and began collecting the scrolls related to Fuin Jutsu. There was a hint of excitement in his eyes, even more so than when he checked the wind jutsus. The reason for this was simple. If Fujin could learn and master every seal in this section, he would be a Fuin Jutsu Grandmaster. Very few people in Konoha could call themselves this. More importantly, it would allow Fujin to ask Hiruzen for the Flying Thunder God. As he collected the scrolls, he realized, I see, almost half of the scrolls here are for Fuin Jutsu. As for the rest, the majority are Renkai fire jutsus followed by water and earth jutsus. I guess this shows the foundation of this village. Fuin jutsu scrolls probably came from Mito, earth and water scrolls from the Senju, while fire scrolls should have come from the remaining clans. In all, Fujin found 58 Fuin jutsu scrolls. He created a few clones, and they divided the scrolls among them. They immediately began studying. After around half an hour, a Junin entered sectioner. He had received information that someone went into sectioner of the library without authorization. However, as soon as he entered, he was left dumbfounded by the sight. 10 people with similar faces were reading the scrolls and had more scrolls with them. His eyes twitched as he thought, using shadow clones to read in the library, that's a first. He coughed to attract Fujin's attention. But Fujin didn't even look at him. Leaving him standing alone awkwardly, he walked towards one of Fujin's clones and asked, "What are you doing?" Fujin's clone looked up and answered, "Reading." The man was left speechless once again. Fujin's clone was looking at him as if he was the biggest idiot in the world. He wondered, do his eyes have an issue? He said, "I am the supervisor of the library. Tell me, why are you in sectioner? It is restricted and only Junins can enter. If you are here without any authorization, you will be arrested and punished by Lord Hokage." Fujin's clone looked back at the scroll and began reading as he said, "I got promoted today and reported to Lord Hokage that I'll be coming here. Feel free to ask him." The supervisor was dumbfounded. He thought, as such a young Junin, I'll have to confirm with Lord Hokage though. It'll be a pain in the ass if he is lying. He asked, "What is your name?" Fujin's clone answered, "Suzuki Fujin." The supervisor nodded and left. He had no intention of talking further with Fujin. He left the section and asked a couple of people to keep an eye on Fujin while he confirmed whether what Fujin said was true. Fujin and his clones ignored this matter. They went through every scroll in detail. It was a few hours past midnight by the time they were done. Fujin dispelled the clones one by one and received their memories. He let out a sigh. "I thought that like Jiotsu's. The number of seals in this section would also be lesser. Instead, it's many times higher. No wonder that despite there being so many seal masters, there are so few grandmasters in Fuin Jutsu. If I don't use shadow clones, I'll probably need more than a decade to learn all these seals. Even with shadow clones, this will be very time-consuming. I should first learn the Rankai Wind Jutsus, then I will focus entirely on the seals." A smile formed on Fujin's face as he thought, "Fortunately, I found the few seals I was looking for. Once I learn them, I can begin working towards that plan." Chapter 280, The Dangerous Copy Ninja. In the last few hours, Fujin had found numerous seals and formations. Among them, the most important seals were the 4 Symbols Seal, 5 Elements Seal, 5 Elements Unseal, Evil Sealing Method, and Iron Armor Seal. In addition, there were many Juin Jutsu seals as well as barriers. Fujin analyzed. The quantity and quality of the seals is good, especially the 4 Symbol Seal. I was worried that it would be in the Forbidden Scroll. In addition, there are also the methods with which Suna and Kumo seal their tailed beasts. However, the reverse 4-symbol seal and 8-trigram seal aren't here. I guess I could learn the 8-trigram seal through experimentation. It could provide me with valuable experience in creating new seals based on what I know. Unfortunately, I have no idea about the reverse 4-symbol seal. It could have been a good trump card to use in the organization. That said, fortunately, I also found a lot of Juin Jutsu seals. After I learn them, I can take steps towards creating a seal for my organization members. Until I succeed, I won't work towards finding new members. Fujin finally got up and left. He stepped out of the library and saw the night sky. He looked up and thought, I completely lost track of time. It's all right. The gains were quite high. I'll take a good rest today. Training can wait for a day. He began moving towards his home. However, despite it being late at night, Fujin wasn't the only one up. Inside the Hokage building, Shikaku sat in a room with a dozen Junin and Ambu captains in front of him. He was assigning them missions to prepare for Suna's retaliations. Though Shikaku was reluctant to work, his situation was far better than another person who was far away from him. Sunagakure, one ninja, was running fast from the Kazekage building to Rasa's house. As soon as he reached it, he slammed the door loudly, while shouting repeatedly, "Kazekage-sama, wake up quickly." The banging and the shouting woke up Kankyo and Temari along with Rasa. With a frown on his face, Rasa walked towards the door and opened it. He angrily asked, "Why are you creating a ruckus?" The messenger immediately said, "Kazekage-sama, we just received a report from Elder Manobu from the West Gar. He stopped speaking as he noticed Temari and Kankyo watching them from behind. Rasa noticed it. The messenger handed a scroll to Rasa and said, "Kazi Kage-sama, it's an emergency." Rasa opened the scroll and began reading. Anger formed in his eyes as he gritted his teeth. He instructed, "Summon all the elders and the council members right now." The messenger nodded and left. Rasa turned around. Temari asked, "Did something happen, father?" Rasa replied without looking at her, "Everything's fine. Go back to your rooms and sleep." Temari had a bad feeling. She asked, "Is Gara all right?" Rasa opened the door to his room and said, "He is fine. What can happen to him? I need to get ready. I'll go to bed." "I will be busy." He entered his room and shut his door. Temari and Kankyo looked at each other helplessly. Rasa began changing into his formal attire. Within 15 minutes, every council member and most elders inside the village assembled in the meeting room. No one was happy at being woken up at this hour. Finally, Rasa entered the room and took his seat. He looked around and noticed that everyone was there. Goza asked, "What happened now? Did Manobu catch the culprit?" Rasa had a grim face. He placed the scroll on the table and said, "No, they set up a trap for the culprit with over 100 troops. However, they still couldn't stop him. He caused Gara to lose control and killed Susumu before running away. They have lost track once again." The eyes of the council members widened. Seijo exclaimed, "How could Susumu be killed?" Goza asked, "Was Gara stopped and is he all right?" A few others began reading the scroll. The elders were shocked. Though Susumu wasn't the strongest among them, he was the most annoying to fight due to his unique usage of genjutsu. Killing him was very difficult. Rasa frowned and answered, "He injured Gara, which made Gara lose control and transform partially." Odaka sensed that he had run away. While Odaka, Susumu and Manobu were stopping Gara, he sneak attacked Susumu and killed him before running away for real. Gara was stopped once again, but a few ninjas died as they didn't have Susumu's help. His words caused silence to spread in the room. Their expressions became grim. Finally, Goza asked, "Who was the culprit?" To be able to run away unharmed from more than 100 ninjas while confronting a Jinwekuric and multiple elite Junans. "Did Konoha send their Sannin?" Rasa replied. "They couldn't identify him. Manobu suspects that he used the transformation jutsu, but neither of the two Sannins is known to use wind jutsus. Though it isn't difficult to learn new jutsus, covering their fighting style would be difficult. So I doubt that is the case." The council members agreed. If not for the result, no one would suspect the Sannins. However, one of the council members who was reading the report asked, "But if not for the Sannins, who in Konoha could do something so remarkable? Even if we consider other villages, there is no one who is famous for using wind jutsus." Manobu said that his ability with the wind jutsus exceeded his. The council members began thinking and discussing. Finally, Goza said, "In the last couple of years, Konoha's copy ninja has been gaining a lot of fame. Could it be done by him? After all, they say that he has copied 1,000 jutsus. In addition, he was taught by that cursed yellow flash." They debated among themselves a lot and finally agreed. Yoseki said, "I thought Kameha was just pushing his reputation to deter other countries. I didn't think that he could actually live up to his reputation. Regardless, we have to retaliate." He was cut off by Seijo, who said, "But we first need to secure the West and set better traps for him. If he is in the West, then he can make more attacks. Even if he doesn't, the journey from there to the border with the Land of Rivers will take 4 days at the very least. We need to intercept him inside our country and kill him. Once he is dead, we can create ambush squads led by elite Junans to infiltrate the Land of Fire and target their nobles." Everyone agreed with his words. However, Ryusa asked, "But who can stop him? He was able to run away from a combined attack by Manobu, Odaka and Susumu. We don't have anyone to stop him." His words caused another wave of silence to spread in the room. None of them wanted to fight the copy ninja. However, Rasa suddenly said, "You don't need to be worried about it. I will make a move myself and bury him in the desert permanently. After I leave, you guys decide which nobles to target and create foolproof plans for the same. For the time being, begin arranging ninjas to scour the desert. As soon as he is discovered, I will make a move." Rasa's words caused mixed feelings to spread among the council members. On one hand, they were proud and relieved that their Kage was making a move himself. Though Kakashi was strong, none of them believed that he would stand a chance against Rasa. However, on the other hand, they were ashamed that there was no one other than Rasa who could act in this situation. After all, their opponent wasn't even in the top 3 in terms of strength inside Konoha. They nodded and immediately got to work. By noon, they had prepared more than 500 ninjas to move out. Rasa himself was ready to move out. Unfortunately, before he could leave, Rasa received another message. Rasa opened the scroll. A chill passed through his spine as he read about the events that took place in Shongto. Cities and towns around Shongto had finally started receiving the migrants. They sent a message to Sunagakure as soon as they heard about the events the migrants described. The news about the events spread through those cities in no time. A fear about Sunagakure and disgust for Rasa spread in those cities as well. Rasa held the scroll tightly. He was shaking in rage as he thought, did Konoha deploy this man to split our country into two? But how can that happen? Unless Konoha also plans to invade us at the same time. But has Konoha's military recovered to this extent? Are they not afraid of Kumo and Iya taking advantage? He looked at the messenger and instructed, call all the council members, even call those two elders. We will be having another meeting. The messenger's eyes widened as he wondered, what message did the scroll contain for his expression to become so grim and for him to contact those two? He nodded and quickly left.